stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On to approval on the agenda.
Move we approve. Support.
There we move into the call to the public. Does anyone at this time would like to speak? Please try to keep it to 3 minutes. Or
I just wanted to, can I, is it okay, well, I wanted to ask some stuff about the survey and stuff, but I'll wait till we get into the, master plan.
Yeah,
it might be easier.
Yeah, I'll just wait for that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thanks.
Anyone else this time?
Jeanette Opena, Bullard Road. Actually, you weren't here, Rich, for the last meeting, correct?
Right.
Right, okay. So you still have a chance to answer me on this. I don't think you were here either, Garrett, for the last meeting, the last time.
I don't think I would do it.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just gonna repeat my question, which I was highly disappointed in the answer. And some people answered me. I have to go back and review the tape, but I did ask, again, pleaded with the commission if you would go to the supervisor and say, look, we've got a bunch of people that wanna help, that have a lot of talent in the community. Could you form a committee of residents? And if it makes everybody feel better, and the supervisor, just say Jeanette Opena won't be involved. Just do that, and ask on behalf of the other people that wanna help. And I was told no, we work for him. So, that upsets me. I understand that you guys are appointed, and I understand you work for the supervisor, but he is elected. And I thought it was a really poor response that nobody on the planning commission would agree to go talk to him and say, look, we've got all these people that wanna do great things, have great talent, that would like to help. So, Rich, Garrett, you don't need to answer me now. I'm kinda disappointed in the whole response, but I hope that 2 out of 7, and I don't think Chet was here either, but anyway, I've been meaning to put it in writing because I found it to be really unacceptable and actually made me really sad. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Public comment this time? Okay. Okay, yeah, so we'll have the approval of the agenda was moved and seconded. Here it's here, so there any issues with the agenda? Good. All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. So, on the agenda, first business is all business, which is the master plan. And there's new business, increase in accessory structure size, which we're intending to recess the meeting at 6:30 for a public hearing regarding that application to increase accessory structure size. So just want to let everybody know that. So on the master plan item, I know we were talking a little bit before the meeting about it, Zach, and I don't know if you can give a brief summary and kind of a little bit of what we talked about. I know we extended it and you had some numbers.
So I'll start with kind of a summary of what's going on with the survey. We thought it was supposed to close a certain date. The township wanted to get on it, and we made contact with them, and we extended it to the 15th. So we believe everyone who wanted to and was aware of it hadn't been able to participate. The survey is closed. We've collected all of the hard copies that were submitted to the township, and those have been entered electronically. The last time I checked, I believe there were 347 survey entries digitally, and roughly 20 or so in the hard copy. The next step we're going to do for processing,
How many were sent out
to
in total, roughly?
my understanding is it went to every parcel. 2,000-ish.
So we got a 10-12% return.
Yeah, which,
Same as we got as a townhouse.
yeah, which sounds bad, but 5 to 10% is we're usually happy with for these types of surveys.
Where they come in.
So it's in a good range. Our next step with the processing is we're gonna check and see if there are any cases where there are a bunch of responses from a single computer address. Now that may not necessarily disqualify them because we're gonna double check with everyone got the little code to enter. We've got the list of here are all the codes that we created. So there may be a case where, you know, husband and wife, they have two properties next to each other, they got sent postcards for each. So it is possible that there may be multiple entries from a single IP address. There are, another heads up is there's a lot of additional text that folks have written. It's a lot to take in. It's really satisfying, all the information you can get from it, but it will take a while. So our goal is to either the end of this week or probably early next week, get the survey results in a format that's understandable and readable, and get that out to you guys so you can start processing it and digesting it well in advance of your next meeting. So that's kind of exciting. Again, 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but for these types, that's a pretty good return rate. Let me see. We do have a couple of new articles that we can poke through tonight, and a couple of articles that were revised with redline from what you saw previously. If folks are interested too, and they know any specific corrections on this, mostly changing from vacant, undeveloped to whatever use is going on, that's something that we discussed as well. And we also have a recommendation for what you guys could use for your community visioning sessions. Every community does a little bit differently. We were originally going to do one for each area, but there was an interest in getting the whole band together and doing that, so it's slightly reconfigured what we are throwing out there for you to consider. And I can start on any of those topics if you'd
Yeah,
like.
thanks. I think maybe for when we're on the agenda item, I guess we have 2 minutes or so. Let's see which, some of them are a little bit more succinct than others. So this one, I don't know, maybe we could start at this one,
Alright.
community character,
Yeah, so this one,
probably relatively straightforward.
yep, not a lot of changes from this. This is a revision from what you guys had previously seen in the lesson meeting. There are a couple spots where we are going to add maps, that's noted in there. On page 2-3 is where the updated traffic count information is. So that's been updated with the latest and greatest from MDOT, as opposed to SEMCOG, which was, I believe, a year or so behind. On page 2-4, it's got the updated Tractor Supply Company in place of the Walmart.
Talking about Rural King.
That's a Rural King.
Yeah, it's a Rural King, Heartland.
Yeah, along 59 is a rural.
Okay. They do have the popcorn though, right?
Yeah, they have popcorn.
Okay.
They got a lot of good stuff there.
Do they put salt on the popcorn or not?
You put your own.
No, but you can buy it in aisle 4, yeah.
Thank you for that. And the thing that I do note on page 2.5 is that where appropriate, we're going to pull comments and information from the community survey and visioning sessions into this to add a little bit of flavor. And your current master plan has pictures related to this, and it's a very useful thing for folks who may not be familiar. So Parcellville, there's a picture of the mill that's in there. City of Linden might have a picture of that. Open space, you may have a picture of that. So We are working with the website fella to make it possible, so anyone who's got a picture can go and submit it. Unless you wanna send Ross out getting pictures of everything, or if you wanna drive around. So know that even though the text is pretty well settled, there will be some extra stuff going into this. And that's it, just basically some minor changes from what you guys saw last time. So unless there are any objections, I'll de-ratify those changes and get that posted, so anyone who wants to see that can take a peek.
Do you wanna put in that they have farmer's market in Heartland at the road game? Is that important, like farmer's market? I don't think so.
Well.
It's up to those guys that just direct it towards them.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly something that I like to include because it's a good way that you can support and it creates community. I'm not sure exactly where it fits though, but I've got a note here.
That's tough, yeah, exactly, and those types of things, like if you want, Heartland Limited, in fact, they all have multiple different types of facts like that. Like, I know Fenton does too. Just wondering, this is more of an overview, how
Yeah.
I feel when I read this,
Yeah.
where maybe it's not so specific.
And one potential home for that might be there. You guys have an entire article that's community facilities and public services, and the current master plan talks about senior centers, and so that could be also a place where farmers markets could be incorporated.
Yeah, they're, see where the comments come from, there's some, how that brings similar to.
Alright, so that's that for that one.
The housing one, maybe.
Housing analysis is a new article,
Yeah.
and there has been interest in the community and from staff to get documents out a bit earlier. So know that everything there in yellow is kind of a placeholder. So for example, where it says occupancy, that's where we're gonna have kind of the bullet point executive takeaway for occupancy. But because that part is still being polished off, we don't know exactly what that
Yeah.
takeaway is gonna be yet. And I have a more recent version of this that has some extra stuff in here, but because you guys got this one, we thought it'd be less confusing to keep you with that than to send you another
Yeah.
one, you know what's going on. So if anyone has questions on some specifics, there are some things that have been filled in, and I can just do highlights on there. So number of households. This is a quick summary. We try to keep the same description where we talk about what's going on here, and then we give comparisons with the county and the state and with surrounding communities. Household, it's got a census definition. We wanted to include that so folks knew what it was. There has been an increase in the number of households. Let's see, on page 4.2, I really love graphs. It's an easy way to find out what's going on. So, as you see there, the number of households you have are increasing, but they're increasing at a lower rate than they have previously. In fact, the 2010 to 2020 was your lowest percentage increase since 1970. The number is about the same as it was previously, but the percentage is less. And then starting on the next page, and again, reminder, the final document, graphs and tables aren't going to leak from one page to the other. This is just kind of a rough and dirty. We show there where Tyrone Township ranks compared to adjacent communities. And this is kind of ranked by the percentage of increase over that time from 1980 to 2020. There are all sorts of different ways you can slice it, where you just rank it by the largest, how many households each community has. It depends what you guys think is most valuable. So remember, part of this background is both to tell the story, capture a snapshot, but it's also to inform decisions and policies later on. On page, at the bottom there, the graph 4.2.2, that was really interesting, trying to get all those different colors for all the different communities, but it's really interesting to see, you know, for example, the Friends in Highland Township have a lot, but they really haven't grown a lot in that period. Let's see. Household size, starting on page 4. Your household size is decreasing. That's very common. Pretty much everywhere in the US is seeing decreases. But as you look on the tables on the various pages, you're actually noticeably larger than most of the surrounding communities. That generally means that you have a lot more families with youngsters in there, and kind of the eye to the planning in the future is you're probably going to come back down to average a little bit. So even though your population is going to grow kind of at the steady rate it has, the number of houses you'll need to house those people will be greater, because instead of having 3.1 people per house, you're going to have 2.8. Sounds like a very minor difference, but over big math, it becomes big. But the takeaway is your household size is decreasing, but you're still the third largest of all your surrounding communities. And actually, City of Linden's a bit peculiar out there. Usually cities have much smaller household sizes than rural communities. If I'm going too fast, let me know. This is kind of all dry, factual stuff.
Yeah,
And again, if there's a better way that you guys, as you're going through this, say, how can you describe this fact, or it would be useful to have this shown a different way, let me know. Also, if you see any dumb typos or word things that are kind of weird, let me know that too. On page 4.6 there, then we also have the very busy chart to see how you guys compare. A very busy graph. On page 4.7, that's actually been filled in. You guys didn't get the version with that. Trying to see, as you would imagine, the quick highlight, and you'll get this in the next version, you see this, but the owner-occupied households are bigger than the renter-occupied. Which usually, if it's a renter-occupied, it's just a couple of single people as opposed to someone who's lived there for a long time. Housing occupancy. The big takeaway from there is you guys have a much higher occupancy for your housing units than the surrounding communities and the county and the state especially.
How does the survey affect all these questions?
So it doesn't necessarily address everything in here, but so for example, in the introduction to housing, we asked a very broad question of how do you feel, I'm going to screw up the phrasing, but it was something to the effect of how do you feel about the rate of housing development in the township? Is it too much? Is it about right? Is it too little? So that will be incorporated into the introduction, that in the survey, so many % of respondents felt it was appropriate. And then as we get to things like single family dwellings, that will break down that, you know, of the respondents, this many lived in a single family house, and we're gonna also work in that people felt that there was need for these types of housing and were opposed to these types of housing. So it's gonna kind of be sprinkled in there. Let's see. So on the top of your page 4.9, that's where you see that you guys really have pretty high homeowner occupied, especially compared to the state. We do have, in the working version, that you guys don't have. That table 4.42 has been filled out.
Okay.
And one thing that will kind of shock your eyes and ask, you'll drop it and look up and say, what the heck's going on? There is a significant amount of seasonal homes in Highland Township. And remember, the census is on April 1st, so if you're not occupying that residence on April 1st, it's considered not occupied. So for example, Highland Township, their occupied housing units is at 34.7%. So you would think it's like Gary, Indiana, that no one's living there, when in fact it's just a quirk of how the community is set up. So you have that already, it just wasn't the one that you guys had a couple of weeks ago. Let's see.
These are factual statistics. They are not wishes from using the data from the survey. Is that correct?
No, this is all generated from the US Census Bureau.
Yeah.
And for the most part, whenever possible, we pull data from the 2020 census because it's a snapshot. In some cases, we had to use something called the American Community Survey, which is kind of a rolling survey that's done with sampling basically every year. So, and if anyone got the long form census back in the day with all those questions, the Census Bureau has kind of canned that for the regular decennial census and instead incorporates that in the ACS. So we've tried to call out where we've done that other one, but whenever possible, we've used the 2020 census. In some cases, for the real small communities, some of your neighboring, they don't include all the information, so we've had to pull it from the other one, which is based on sampling. The housing unit types is not filled out yet, but the census says here are the number of single-family houses, here are the number of units in multiple family dwellings, here are the number of people in institutional facilities, foster homes, those types of things. So that will be added in for the next version. Mobile home parks is not currently in your master plan, but we wanted to document what's going on. It has been completed in my working draft, and we talk about the 2 parks that you've got and the number of units available in it. And the reason why it's important to include that is because as a community, if someone came and said, we want to put another mobile home park here, you can point to this and say, we've already got a lot. We've got more than our neighbors. We don't think it's appropriate for us to take more. And so that's why I've added that new little bit in there.
Yeah, I'd like to actually bolster that if we could, I mean, because we do have more than, I think,
Yes.
surrounding people around us, and I think we've done our fair share on
Yeah.
that. I mean, I just wanna make sure that that's, like you just said, if somebody comes in, we say, no, we've done our, but that was the point you mentioned on heavy industrial before. If you have it, as long as you have it, you're covered.
Yep. And so what we've got right now is information that Mr. Nicholson was able to provide. We describe where the 2 parks are at, the size, the number of units that they've got. We don't list, like Argentine Township only has 1 and these other ones only have 1. If that's something comparable or greater than the surrounding communities.
And no offense to anyone at all, but, you know, and I know they're now marketing those to the townships as affordable housing communities, not mobile home communities, but I think we've got our fair share.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can add a bit in there. For the new single-family dwellings, this is kind of a new section. You don't have it in your current master plan. It's just good to see what's going on. Are you getting more builds? Are you getting less builds? And you guys are still building quite a bit. It's a bit choppy just because you don't have a large base compared to a bigger city, but it's still pretty healthy. The building in the last 3 years, well, the data is available from 2019 has been pretty consistent. One other new section, which your assessing office was able to provide but hasn't been incorporated yet, is housing sales information. And so we've got information for all the at arm's length sales, so that excludes if you're selling it to your kids or you're transferring it from your name to your and your wife's name or to a trust, but actual sales. We've got information going back, I believe it was since 2008, number of sales per year, the square footage, the acreage, so you guys will be able to see the trends of how prices and those things have been changing over the time.
Does this section, would it include land?
Yep, it includes the acreage of the property and the square footage of the house.
But if a parcel does not have a home on it, would it include that or no?
For this group, it just is for housing.
Because sometimes that's, if one person owns 5,000 acres, and all of a sudden they sell 4,000 of it, then probably guess that, hey, that big farm might turn into something different. But just, where my thought was going, when you were mentioning that.
Yep.
I don't know if that data's available or not, or it might not be, but.
It can be, it's a bit trickier than this, like this, the BSNA software, you can hit your parameters and it poops out a Microsoft Excel sheet. And where it's most telling and informative is you guys can see how the prices have changed over time. Like in 2008, it's gonna be really low, and you can see how that's compared, and you'll be able to see, is it really large houses that are selling or smaller houses, or what type of churn is going on. So again, it's not something you currently have, but it's something that I think will be pretty informative.
Are you gonna include a state comparison, so we see where we're at compared to the state of Michigan? Because I really think if we could look not just where we are, but where the state has moved as well. I don't think national matters, but just to see. I think it might be interesting.
I've been working on where to try to find a clean copy of that from the state. At the county level, it's fairly easy because they have to do equalization reports, so we can very easily get something similar from the county. Statewide, I'll have to ask someone smarter than me to see exactly how we find that.
Could you include both, state and county?
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna try to.
If you can, right.
Yep, county will be
National doesn't matter.
easy, yep.
Yeah. I don't think so.
But it is a very nice metric, as you raised, to see, are we more affordable or less affordable than what's around us or the state? You know, and if we're more affordable, we can probably expect that more people are gonna be moving here just because they can afford to live here versus not being able to afford. If you're more expensive than the surrounding communities, you probably are gonna expect you're not gonna get as much housing pressure or development, and you can have maybe more say on how it gets developed, because there's more demand for it. But yeah, we'll get the county stuff and work on getting the state comps in there like we've got for the other sections. So my question would be, is there anything else that you think you'll need to know about the housing in Tyrone Township to include in here or to inform goals or objectives later on?
Right now, maybe not at the moment, I don't think, but we may come back to it after the public hearing. See, when we try to maintain our time.
Yep. And I didn't practice talking right to the time, but
No, yeah,
it
just
happens.
watch it, let's work. Makes sense.
Do we have anything that delineates the difference between condominiums as opposed to regular houses within a subdivision and things like that? The question I'm asking there is along the lines of site condos and which seem to be the popular variety of subdivisions that people are looking to develop.
So I actually say I have maybe another minute here, so I'll talk and fill in. So for those not familiar, pretty much since 1997, every time there's been a multiple family or a development with multiple houses, it's most likely been a site condominium. which is, it's a site condominium, it uses the same condominium act as buildings do, as opposed to a plat, which is what we think of downtowns or traditional subdivisions. And that happened because the plat act in Michigan was really onerous and painful, and it took a lot of time to do. And sometime in the mid-90s, a clever attorney realized we can do the same thing using the condominium act, and it looks and talks and quacks like a duck the same way. So the reason why it's popular is it doesn't involve state agencies. You don't have to get approval in Lansing or from MDOT or all these other places. The main area where it's different from a traditional plat is it requires a homeowners association. So everyone becomes entangled. But all the units, they're technical units, not lots, are considered the same as lots and need to meet that stuff. And it's traditionally for the much larger developments as opposed to splits along the roads. With that, I will be quiet so you can add
No, that's a good summary of what Kurt asked.
Move that we go into the public meeting, public hearing, I'm sorry.
Support. In favor of moving over the public hearing? Aye. Opposed? All right, so we'll go into the public hearing. I'll read the notice here. Notice is hereby given, the Tyrone Township Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, August 17th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. at the Tyrone Township Hall. The purpose of the public hearing is to receive public comments regarding the following proposed land use permit. The request by Michael Susan Pascarella for an increase in the permitted accessory building floor area up to a maximum of 1,200 square feet, subject to compliance with the percent lot coverage and placement standards in Article 20 schedule of regulations. Located at 6360 Bullard Road, Fenton, Michigan. Parcel ID 470434401017. The property is zoned LA1, lakefront residential. So this time, we go to the review of the application. And this is the this side, so the structure will be on the road side of the residence. And the applicant's here, hello. And, this did, part of this application, they were required to go to the ZBA for the one setback that was less than 10 feet. And that was approved. And, my understanding is you're extending the, I don't know, if you wanna come up and give a summary of it at the podium, here, that would.
Yeah, the drawing, I just have that little line laid out there.
Could you come to the podium? It helps, yeah.
Gets reported on.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, just looking to extend my garage, actually it'll be a two-story, the addition's gonna be a two-story, the existing's a one-story, but it's gonna be attached there. I have a 24 by 30 here shown. I think I can get up to 24 by 32 with the square footage allotment of 1,200 square feet. I just wanted to show something that was commensurate to what I'm trying to build in the future. I know I got to come up with, more hard design plans after, but I thought this would be enough for now.
So this is the footprint here that we're showing.
But that's
On the screen, is this the footprint of what you're proposing?
Yeah, if you go down a little bit, that's the house.
Yeah.
If you keep coming down, right here would be the existing garage. Earlier, last month, we got a permit to keep it at the 8.6 feet away, because that's where the existing one ends. And then if you go right here, and then it's gonna be 24 by 30, the addition. Or like I said, it might be 24 by 32.
Was the 8.6 granted as a ZBA?
Yes, that.
So that was granted. Other than the 8.6, is there any other variances? It means height and other setback requirements.
just that one, so,
So it meets everything else. Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah, and only item is, that we're extending, currently it's 30 feet, if you're saying you go 32 feet, right? You're saying you potentially, this is showing 30 feet. So
Yeah, the 1,200 would give me, allow me probably
Yeah.
24 by 32, but I mean, I gotta, once I get my architect or my, just sign the drawings built up, I'll validate that I won't be going over because the existing garage is already, I think I get about 760 square feet I can build up to.
Yeah, I would kept it 1160,
Yeah, so,
the way it's presented.
the way it's presented now, yeah.
Good.
Just from, oh, I know from the ZBA part of this, I did on site, I drove there and saw it. And there is, as far as a conflict with neighboring properties, we didn't, from my recollection, we didn't receive any neighbor input negatively, but in this area,
It looks,
if there's buildings there,
like
then
this one.
people's
Yeah.
objects go in the buildings, and generally, from what I know, people are happier with that than having stuff sitting in the car. But it just what I noticed from looking
I
at
do
it.
have,
Nothing to do with the plan
there's
commission.
one neighbor here today.
Okay, yeah, and we will, after we review the application, we'll go into the public comments regarding this.
sorry.
As part of the public hearing.
I'm new to all this.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
She's been very helpful, she's willing to keep me in the straight and narrow.
Just feedback from the planning commissioners, ZBA. Thanks, Zach. I don't know if you have any comments or anything on this one. I know you never.
I have not reviewed it, look at your process and your criteria.
Yeah, we have that.
So you're saying the max you would go is like 31 feet 8 inches? Would put you right at the 1200.
Yeah, no, that was the only question I had, was the 1,200, is that the slab dimensions or the actual floor space that I can use? Because if I have a 2 by 6 walls, that's 1 foot off of the 24 by 30, right? Because each.
Yeah. Well,
That's
Does you know what I'm saying, the floor, is it the 1,200 square feet, the floor space of the garage, or just the floor space of
It's the outside.
the structure?
Outside dimension.
Okay, then we'll probably stay with the 24 by 30, we'll probably stay with this then, if that's the case.
And then
I
for
would.
That way, because if it's 11.6, I don't wanna get too
You
close
want
to
to bump
12.
up against it.
I don't wanna bump off by a foot or something, so I'll probably stay with this then. I was thinking it was not the footprint, but the actual floor space. That's what was my question. That's the only reason I thought.
Outside the building.
Yeah, all right, then no problem. We'll stay with this size.
the critical thing is that you cannot be closer than what the setback was that was approved at the ZBA. So that
Yeah, we
dimension
expect it to
has to
straight,
stay
yeah.
there, and then after this public hearing, I think, it sounds like you may or may not, but it would be good to confirm it and have a final site plan that says, hey, this is the size of our building, which is part of our process that we will need.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought it was. My plans built up, then bring them in
Yeah.
to stand. All right, yeah.
So I think we need a street view and a rear view of the building as it is proposed anyway.
Elevation.
Yeah.
So we have the elevation.
So, as part of what we would need during the site plan review for this, we need so we can see, hey, what side, as Kurt mentioned, side elevation, where's the view from?
Side elevation of the.
Yeah,
of
so you can
addition
see the
itself.
height in relation to surrounding properties. Yeah.
But since there's not a variance issue on those two items, or any of those items, could you do this administratively? To keep it moving so we can make the motion and pass this through tonight?
No, that is part of the ordinance. We have to have for sure, on these types of things, we have examples that Ross or Carrie can review that way you can see what type of site plan they're looking for, if you have a question on that.
This is something that can be approved with conditions tonight, additional
He's already got his stuff, so.
I mean, I would be fine with that.
If he brings the building envelope to the size and it meets our requirements, we're not.
You know, as long as they stay within this.
Yeah, your side elevations are your side elevations.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want with it, but the envelopes meet our requirements, then
Yeah.
I don't
As
see
long
why
as they
we
stick
can't.
with it.
Yeah,
If you can get a stamp, then go for it.
And we don't have to as part of the public hearing. I have determination on, we can in the next part of the agenda, but it's,
I like moving these things through every year, so.
but the parts that we consider on this, share what's in our ordinances, these items here. You know, orientation or drainage, those types of things, but most of this, and I don't know, are you building this with the same material as your home?
To say what?
Material as your
Yeah,
home?
oh yeah, it's just gonna be a stick build.
And then, well, exterior.
Exterior's gonna match the existing,
Okay.
so it's yellow siding, so I'll be
Yeah,
always trying to change it, but I don't think I will.
yeah.
I say that now. When people are.
Right, but see, what we have to be able to do is make sure that the building that you're proposing, what it looks like, and does it match the house, and does it fit in with the dimensions and stuff, so even if we do conditional approval, all that stuff would have to be completed.
Prior approval, but we could do a condition, correct?
Yes,
And we could, yeah, to Garrett's point, we could
right.
send it on down the line.
So we'll go, before our comments, we'll go to, the next part of the public hearing is to receive public comments regarding this application. So does anyone here at this time like to make public comments regarding the application?
We totally approve.
You can-
Please come up. Just so we can, other people that are online can hear you.
Thank you.
My identification.
Yes, if you could.
Fran Mellon, M-E-L-L-E-N, and we totally approve of what our neighbors wants to do.
So you
What's
are-
your address, please?
6340 Bullard.
Two doors down.
Okay.
Thanks for taking the time to come here.
Thank you.
Yes, very appreciative.
All right, any other public comments regarding the public hearing item? All right, we'll go to planning commission and planner comments regarding this item, and we did give many of our comments already. So there's some, any other items, and we can choose to act on it as part of the public hearing, or we can close it and
I would
suspend order of
I would
business.
close it and go back into the meeting to approve it.
Okay, all right. Any other comments?
I move to conditionally approve it based on Ross's review and make sure it complies with everything else. ZBA has already approved the 8.6 or whatever that is, and so we, this gentleman on his way.
Let's say, so it's part of the public hearing, but it moved that we.
Move that.
Conditionally.
Conditional, yeah, recommend conditional, obviously conditional.
On receiving, a site plan that shows
Elevations, building material, you know, they're gonna want
elevations, building exterior.
Yeah, like an exterior review.
Yeah, just make sure it's consistent.
All
Here,
this stuff
good
we
idea.
have to go through anyways.
Yeah.
To hear,
But yeah, cause, well, yeah, and I wanted to get, I had to get the size approved before I could get any drawings done, so.
Sure. I wouldn't bump it up though, cause that might keep.
No, and again, the bump it up was part of the not knowing what
Yeah.
the 1200 was.
Well,
Foot and a half won't be
and
worth it.
the approval would be based on what you presented
Tonight.
This, and it'll stay there, because now with that, knowing that 1160s, I don't wanna get any closer than that.
Okay, so there's a motion to recommend conditional approval of the application, conditional upon receiving an updated site plan with rear, side, and front elevations showing the exterior building, and how it's to be built. Is that correct, Steve? Is there something that's, what I'm wondering, okay, so is there a second? Motion, second, did you get that carried?
Yep, thanks.
Okay, so, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye, any opposed? None opposed? No.
Move did we close the public hearing and go back into regular session?
Okay, the motion closed, support, all in favor? Aye. Any
You're on your
opposed?
way, good luck.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Try to make this easy.
Appreciate it.
Public hearing is closed. Back into the regular agenda.
Stay for the rest of the meeting.
Go back onto old business, item number 1, which is master plan. And we were discussing, let's see, item 4.
Back. We didn't, do we?
Yeah, right.
No, see, we went through the community character, and housing, and the introduction item here is mostly like something we reviewed multiple times where.
I know, we're not gonna do, I just wanna make sure I didn't miss something. Thank you.
We were left on site condos, I believe.
Yeah, it was the last item, we were discussing, Zach gave a kind of overview of how they came to be.
So, and I've been trying to think of how to sprinkle that in here.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly how we'll get the information for this, but one way to approach it would be to introduce, here are the different ways that lots are created for housing, and this is what our split has been over the past couple of years. Now, that's gonna take a bit of legwork, because Mr. Nicholson is gonna be the one to know, is this house built on a division, land division, a plat, or a site plan? But that would be probably the most informing to say, here's where things are getting built. So they talk in the housing industry about available lots, and there's a dearth of them in Michigan, even with the downturn that we're going, or the challenges for the housing that we're hitting right now. I will think about that and talk it over with Mr. Nicholson to see if there's a way that we can pull that out.
Well, that's one of the things I see is one of the, at least in my mind, one of the major housing issues. Simply because the site condo process, either PUD or, I can't remember the other one is, those allow smaller lots for development. And is that the direction the township wants to go? And I recognize that developers have the ability to do a lot of things under the acts in Michigan that provide for those types of arrangements, but also I think everybody needs to know that up front, so that when developments are put together, that's most likely what you're going to see.
Yeah. So, more detail than we probably ever wanted, and definitely more than anyone in the audience really wanted or knew they needed to hear. If you're doing a site condominium or a plat, just a regular one, you still have to meet the same lot area and the dimensions. Where it starts is if you're just splitting off from Farmer McDonald's property. Where it starts to deviate that, there are two cases. One is open space preservation, and that's something that the state of Michigan says if you're a community with available developable space with these densities, you must allow this option for people to use. And basically what that is, what the state requires you to do is they have to come into plan and show how they can develop with the base density. So you would have to show a site condo with all the lots are 1 acre. for example, and they have the minimum width and the roads and all those things to be approved. And then if they preserve half of that property, so let's say they've got a 40-acre parcel they're doing this on, and if they save 20% of it in an undeveloped state or for farmland, then they can build all of those houses in that other half. So the state basically says you have to allow the same number of units, but they can be smaller.
Yeah, we just went through this pretty extensively recently.
Well, it's a little bit different from the urban lake, that was a PUD.
Yeah.
So
let me,
Yep.
so clarification, so this is an additional thing that's allowed? Other than so you can do this without a PUD?
yep, the state says you have to allow them to do this.
And what is, I don't.
Open space preservation.
Excellent.
Where, and it's, like, I always,
Cause
like,
they're open space, how could that be bad? Yeah,
Right.
I love it.
it's really weirdly written. I like to say if you run through zoning ordinance and something you just like, what the heck's going on, the state bequeathed it to us. There's generally a natural limit to these types of developments though. So the rule of thumb is if you have decent soils, you need 1 acre for an on-site septic field and well in your reserve field. So it's hard to get lots much smaller than that for these types of developments unless it has sewer that can feed it. I don't believe there have been any in Tyrone Township, at least not in the recent history from my knowledge. I know someone tried to do something using open space preservation, but they had a very liberal reading of what open space was and tried to include setbacks within the lots. The state says you can't really do that because it's not open space. The other option that folks have for flexibility is you can allow this, but you're not required to allow it as a planned unit development. So the general big brush idea with planned unit development is there will be times where someone comes in and wants to do a project in a way that deviates from the zoning ordinance, but everyone agrees is a better product for the community and the people who are using it. The magical terms are recognizable and substantial benefit. And so in that case, the state allows you to do it and says you can set out the guidelines. So I just went through the exercise in Oxford Township of, they got a couple of gravel pits with hundreds, actually one's 1,200 acres that they know are gonna turn soon. So they're like, we wanna get this set. You can set your criteria. You can say you must preserve at least 25% of the lot, or 30%, or 50%. You can say, if you're gonna do this, you have to put pathways through it, you have to put a pathway along the road, you have to put in a park, you have to put in dry hydrants. So you can really define things that are the above and beyond recognizable and substantial benefits. And you can also tweak the math and put limits on how much things can change. So there are basically 2 ways that communities will allow additional lots. Well, 3. One would be if they've got lots for things that aren't dwelling units. So if there's like a clubhouse or a golf course or some utility thing, that doesn't count in the number of lots. The other 2 ways are if they preserve more open space than what you require. So let's say you need to have 25% of the lot is open space, and they do 50%. There's usually some kind of carrot for them doing that because there's a benefit of having more space. The other way that communities would allow additional lots is by doing certain design things that you think are above and beyond. Just pulling something from the air, and again, this is all different for all different types of communities, but if you're in a community that has identified you want to have some duplexes for young families or folks who are, empty nesting, you can say if you include a number of duplexes in this, then you get to have additional lots or something like that. Whatever you guys think are additional value things. And you can cap the number of additional lots. You can cap how small lots can get, all those types of things.
Are all those on a, like a case-by-case basis, right? You can't put that in an ordinance, right? Those, you can put the recognizable and substantial benefit part of it.
There are a couple different ways communities can approach it. You can just leave it wide open and say recognizable substantial benefit. and then it becomes between the developer and the planning commission and township board to argue of whether or not it is. A lot of communities like to kind of plant their flag and say, these are the things to us that are recognizable, and then kind of add a potpourri or wild card and other things that may be acceptable.
Next, I think maybe Kurt, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but your question is how do you make it so it's clearly defined what
Well, I
plan
think,
is, maybe
yeah,
I'm
I think as we
misunderstanding.
go into the master planning process, people need to understand what kind of developments can happen here as a result of or rezoning land
Yep.
or sales to come out. And, you know, whether you want a homeowners association, I guess that's an issue that has to be chewed on by the people who buy property in that area.
Under this open space preservation district, when we're talking about open space, is wetlands considered part of the open space?
For the state, it is, yes.
Because that's a big,
Yep. Now, for the plan unit development, you can put caps on how much of it is
that
wetland.
really throws it wide open
Yep.
if it's an area like urban lake.
Yeah, well, we
I'm just
define
saying
we
it's-
can only use 50%.
Right, but that's, I just think that should be at
Yep.
least talked about.
And the communities I've worked in who've dove into this, they were really focused on that, and it's kind of a back and forth. There's usually some prorating for wetlands that are preserved, not at a full 1-to-1, and then there's usually a cap.
You can't really build on them anyway, so it's almost like you're getting a bonus for something you couldn't use anyways.
Partially, but they could also, if it's not a state regulated wetland, they can fill it in. And so it's kind of that, you wanna keep it, you wanna give them some credit for preserving it, but not full credit because they have to do a bunch of extra work to do that. So it's a balancing act.
I thought any wetland wasn't allowed to be filled in. All it takes is one neighbor to call, and they're not gonna go there. So how is it just state regulated wetland?
It's size based.
Yeah, so,
But even if it's cattails on the side of a road where someone's got, you know, some drainage issues and it starts growing, and the next door neighbor is mad and they give, you know, Eagle a call, and they're saying, hey, you can't touch those cattails, and it's just based off of poor drainage that the road commission didn't take care of. So then where's the line drawn there?
so,
Like, what's state regulated?
for state regulated, it's been a little while since I've been knee deep in this, but there's a minimum size. So like if you just have a wetland, and I wanna say it's 5 acres, it may be 3, it's either 3 or 5, it's some prime number, some prime odd number there. So anything that size is state regulated, and you have to go through Eagle, and you may have to do mitigation if you fill or adjust it. There are other state regulated wetland categories, so if it's just a 10,000 square foot, but it's connected to a water body in the state of Michigan, so if it's connected up to Ore Creek, or to a lake, or a larger water body, then or larger wetland, then it's also state regulated. And then the state kind of has special categories, so if it's a fen or it's a wooded wetland, there's some special flora fauna it could be. So if it's not state regulated, Eagle will come out and say this is not state regulated. Have fun with it.
Yeah, this might be, we might be getting a little
Yep.
down to one thing, but which is okay, it's good.
Yeah, well, and one other thing that's been happening is, at the state level, when there are wetlands, and there's a very large project in Putnam Township, 990 acres, 99 houses, wetlands, 2 lakes, that ran into an eagle buzzsaw. They had to get permits because they were filling in some of these wetlands for roads and that type of stuff, and Eagle has basically said, we're not going to approve it if there's any wetland within individual lots. And they're really upset because they're like, show us where in the state regulations or standards says we can't do that, and they said, we're not gonna approve it. So my understanding is there are a lot of developers who are being wily, they have attorneys who know ways around this, and if you're a farmer, you get to do a lot more things to wetlands than you or I can do. You can put a tile through it and drain it, you work it for a year, now it's no longer wetland, you can put a house on it.
Yeah, so in this vein, Zach, I'm just curious, is there, does the county have like, maps or things to where they, like, would designate as, hey, this area is harder to build in, and we are gonna restrict it more so than somewhere else, like, cause that type of information would be helpful for us.
Yep.
To be in sync with Livingston County. I know there's probably some data out there that I've looked at other stuff, but you look at so many things and I forget.
Yep, the county doesn't necessarily maintain it, but there's, at the state level, you can even look it up now, there's a Michigan Wetland Viewer and a National Wetland Inventory, and they're based on a couple of different information sources. One is the soil surveys they did back in the 1930s where they went around with a post holer and dug holes all over the place. The others, when they fly aerials, they do them in the spring now so that if it bounces back shiny, they know there's water there. And so there is a very rough idea of, based on the soils and the shininess, we think this is probably wetland.
Yeah, I think maybe it would be part of the county planning.
Yep. But in fact, we have maps prepared, and a new section that I am recommending going to your master plan about will have land capacity, which is basically, and that was a huge problem in Argentine Township. In some areas, just the soil you can't put septic fields there. And so they have the map that shows these areas we can't do it. We wanna have really big lots or farm or preserve spaces there.
I don't wanna run way off the beaten path here with this, but I just wanted to make sure people understand as we move into the future, this is the way a lot of people see housing being delivered to communities. The other thing I've seen too is, I think it's Ann Arbor is going back and I don't wanna say rezoning because that's really not proper to what they're saying, but they're encouraging the use of multifamily dwellings for a lot of the single-family dwelling areas within the city.
Yep, my sister actually has a house there, and the quick version is they said you can do accessory dwellings wherever you want. So if you want to build an apartment out back for the Fonz or Mike Seaver, you can do that. No special approvals aside from the regular permits, setbacks and size and that type of stuff. They've also made it easier in a lot of their single-family zones to do the duplex or multiple family with size constraints. So they did it, but they also are trying to make it look more like a house than like a 2/2 or a 4/4.
Do you see that as something the state could force on the townships?
I think we're a way away from that, and where the biggest challenge would be in townships is on-site septics. So you have to have water to support that. If you have 2 houses on 1 lot, you're gonna need to have more than that 1 acre. So usually the rural communities that allow accessory dwellings have some language about the lot has to be bigger, because we know there's gonna be greater demand of the soils to take care of what's going on.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look ahead to 20, 30 years as opposed to looking back to what we've done before.
Yeah.
Because
I'd say it wouldn't be impossible by 2040. I think how they would do it for townships would be a lot trickier and would have to be more sensitive to the fact that you can't support it without infrastructure.
Okay. I don't wanna take up any more time.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking, commissioners feel like if we do, I know there was a couple of comments regarding the master plan from the public that we held, so would it make sense to get the public comments and then we can take those in and as part of our, as we go forward on the agenda, I think that maybe will help.
Yep.
Address.
Instead of all at the end.
Yeah, so, if nobody minds, if we, good time to do it, and then we go forward from there, so. I know, Scott, I know you had comments regarding master plan specifically, I don't know. Is now a good time, or we good?
I have some comments and
Yeah,
some questions.
It'll be great, yeah.
All right, are we doing any of the comments now, or is it?
No, this is specific to the master plan.
All right, Scott Beecher, White Lake Road. I'm just concerned about the numbers of surveys. Like somebody's got 10 parcels, they're gonna get 10 surveys. So how many, it's not gonna be 10-12% of the population. So, and I think it's gonna affect on some of the things like roads, stuff like that, Most people shouldn't have too much say over what we repair roads or not, because they're gonna get hit the hardest, we know that. But, that's kind of unfair. Now, site condos, I sold, you know, when I was still in real estate. And the biggest thing about site condos, well, they're nice, you get in there, you hand the people the restrictions, and once they get moved in, they find out, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this, I can't do that. I want the hell out of here. And they're got the house up for sale, they're going to buy a lot now, we're gonna build a house. So, you know, that's one thing people, you know, you mentioned it around here, but you could probably ask Helena or her or Jeanette, they probably wouldn't even understand how a site condo development operates. But, I still, it's like you don't own your lot, you know, it's community owned.
You're definitely quarantined. There are some people that enjoy that because
Yeah.
you can say no yard signs at all,
Yeah.
and you don't have to see all
Yeah,
that clutter,
yeah.
so it's.
And you can't have doghouse, you can't have clotheslines, I mean, it's quite, quite, you know, nerve-wracking for somebody that buys a house, they don't read the restrictions. Okay, anyways, the survey, boy, I wish we'd have had a lot of this information before we did the survey. You know, I think, you know, I don't wanna beat you guys over the head with that. I'd really like to know, I wanna break down the harder numbers on the surveys, who got them, you know, and how many surveys went, you know, if there's 360 out there, it was the true number 200 because there are multiple lot owners got surveys. I mean, I didn't know that. I know we're gonna have public hearings, you know, on issues. We should have, I'd like to see, you know, there's a lot of things we can get into. I mean, it's hard for me to go off the top of my head, but I wasn't too crazy about survey. Like I said, I think we need more information in the beginning. The number of people living in a house, and you're gonna find, I mean, you don't really ask the people, is my daughter's still living, I'm retired, my daughter's living there, my neighbor's daughter's living, his two children live there, he's retired. You gotta allow that going on, so you said the numbers were up, they're gonna go back down. Because of the economy and stuff like that, you got family members living with family members, so that's why probably the numbers are high. And if we go back down in the recession area, you're gonna probably see more of that, it might go up. So, but other than that, I think we're getting closer, and, I just have to work hard. I don't think we're gonna get many people out here. I know you guys are hoping, I mean, it's the same old troublemakers, you know, you call us, but, you know, but we care, I mean, we do, and, but I'm not, you know, it's like the survey, you don't get that many people. And they won't affect them until something goes in their backyard, and then while they're out there screaming bloody murder, where were you when we were talking about all this stuff? So, let's go to work and let's get this thing going here, I guess.
I think you just have to remember that the survey is a tool.
Yeah.
If we had 347 surveys completed that all said they wanted an asphalt plan, I don't think that would still
No.
cause any change.
No.
But I do think though, it's interesting that we almost got, within a couple percentage points, almost the same amount we got out of the townhouse survey. That was 13%, and we're talking now about.
It's the same people.
It's the same people.
So like I said, it doesn't really give you a true number.
Yeah.
Because like on the townhouse, and once you mentioned you're gonna put the money into the townhouse or the roads,
Yep.
it aggravated those people.
Yep.
So the ones that were aggravated actually answered the survey, but the rest of them really didn't care.
But I just thought that.
No, I'm just saying,
Just being so close.
but realistically, the townhouse was on that lot. If they had moved it, probably not that many people.
It'll get moved.
They probably would,
It'll get
no,
moved.
I'm just saying, it probably wouldn't have raised, there wouldn't have been that many people raising hell over it. Because they probably would assume we would have moved it. But that's what I'm trying to get at. It's such a low number, it's sad, it's sad. Because people need to get a little more.
How many people vote in the elections, you know?
Well, like I said.
Let's keep this to the.
No,
But he's right,
I know.
this is part, listen, Rich, this is what we.
I know, but I want to keep it concise
I
to
know,
our
it's
day.
like, it's like.
Biggest
we sit here and
sickness,
talk all
only
night
two
about
years.
I know. So yeah, I think,
Hey, Steve and I are on it, we don't.
okay, anyone else then regarding the master plan?
Yeah, okay, regarding the master plan, during the discussion of the master plan, Kurt brought up the year 2030. Wonder, you know, what'll be going on there. Just a little aside, you might want to look up the UN's 2030 agenda plan. Take a look at was brought up that year, so it will affect all of us. Jeanette worked at it, fully drive. I think we could get people out. I think we could get some excitement going here. Someone spoke last week about getting some ads on radio. They'll do ad spots for us. Why aren't we doing that? We need to do everything that we can to reach out to the people. What about a big sign out here that says visioning sessions coming, we need you, and the dates? I mean, again, a community, residents could be involved in arranging all of that, looking after it, maybe even raising the funds for those signs. But I really do think we could get people excited. And people are not happy. When you hear about the trouble of getting into the survey and some of the questions and people giving up on it, I think it's great that we did at least get to the numbers that we got, for the townhouse, but I honestly believe we could have and should have had more people. So what can we do to get some excitement out there? I think there's ways to do it. You guys, again, if you want our help, we'll brainstorm and come up with a plan and even execute it.
Free beer.
I would provide
Free beer,
free beer,
yeah.
yes. No.
Maybe go
They
and
might.
Sorry.
Make it real creative.
see the kegs up there.
That might be really big. Zach, I don't know, can I address it or I have to address you guys? The version in this master plan was named the same as last week's meeting, but there were changes to it. Could you put a versioning number on them or something? Just so we know, because I found a couple different changes, but it had the same name on the file. There was nothing that distinguished it.
Yet, so I love to use the watermark and the title at the top.
Mhm.
Whenever I go to edit, I do a save as. I'm not sure if it was a naming convention what got on the website, but I will take a peek at whatever
Yeah,
you've
it
got.
has the same one in the meeting last week as tonight. but
Yeah,
I don't-
it is the same.
But there's changes. I saw changes in it.
That's curious.
Well, there's the graph filled out at the end, or that one, anyway, I can talk to you about it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't the same. So I didn't know what to look for in changes. I just noticed a couple of them. Okay, sorry. I think that was all that I wanted to mention. Again, I just really think that we get people excited. One thing you could do is let's utilize our email. We had no email come out that said that this visioning session was canceled for tonight. It was on and thank you guys for doing that, for getting it canceled and extending the survey. But it really would have been nice if, I think Sarah had said, I read her response, we should be doing everything we can. I said during the meeting, she was remote and couldn't get on the Zoom meeting, so she sent me her response and I read it off my phone.
No, we talked about canceling the meeting, the visioning last, Kurt, we talked about last.
I don't think that was definitely.
For tonight, I was like,
You talked about it.
Talk about
we
it.
said we were gonna cancel.
Right.
We
Are
canceled
we gonna
the meeting.
reschedule? Are
The
we gonna
vision,
have
I'm talking
another
about
one?
vision.
The visioning, yes.
That was canceled.
Vision
Yes.
is,
But many people didn't know it was, what I'm
Should've been
saying is,
email go out.
that's part of the communication process, right? I'm just suggesting it would be nice if all stops were pulled out.
Should have been emailed out.
I think it shows, that you put an importance on it, and anyway, so let us know if you want any help. I can make signs, I can do all that kind of stuff, I can even pay for some of that stuff myself. So we just need to know that you guys want us to help.
so how
Thank
many,
you.
how many visionary sessions we gonna have since we canceled today?
We have that later.
We will,
Okay.
just as the counties are on their comments at this time. Yeah.
Karen Morgan, Heartland Road, 9070. I'm not as concerned about the survey results because that's universal. If you want to be involved, you have access to it. The digital, I am a little bit concerned only because I'm not very tech savvy, but I made a point to start coming to meetings, I made a point to make calls, and so there's other ways to get information. I hope I'm not considered a troublemaker.
Don't hang out with
We're
us.
just involved citizens that, we appreciate everything that you guys do, and I know it's a lot of work. I don't presume that anybody knows or doesn't know certain things, but, I'm thankful that you guys are here to listen to us in the public forum. I did put it in, my request, I guess, into my survey, but I wanted to know, does the master plan include any parks maybe, or locations that pickleball courts would be put into?
Senior Center.
Heartland Senior Center,
Yeah, so we.
so something like that, I guess.
Maybe, not, at this time, not specific to that, but as part of, that was one section as part of the survey, and that will give us feedback as we talk about it to consider, well, should it be part of our township's plan going forward or not, right? It's part of the process to look at that. But-
So, yeah, right now we're at the collecting information phase, and if we get 100 of the 300 folks say we want pickleball, then that's probably gonna inform the goals and objectives later on that say we wanna try to figure out where we can get pickleball.
Or parks, because
Yes.
we haven't heard a lot of information about parks. There's been a lot of conversation when I was here for Pioneer Days that people were interested in that, and, you know, something to figure out. Again, it goes back to how we pay for it. But we're like, Zach, I know I jumped the gun here, but we're gathering information, you know, we're gathering stuff, and
So at this point, you're saying no plans yet for considering it?
no, not at all.
No, in fact, I would like to see a park.
Yeah, I think we're just gathering information.
We're going to bring that up as part of the visioning session.
I like, personally, off the record, I'd love to see, personally, off the record.
We're the only township in Livingston County that does not have a park.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, as one of several Tyrone Township, members that go and play pickleball in other townships, even up to Flint and Swartz Creek schools, was hoping that we would get to play closer to home, if that's, an option for us.
I can answer that. Heartland has a hell of a lot of people play senior center at the school there.
And it's so packed that you're sitting
It
there
is,
for
there's
3
a lot of
hours
people
in the
there.
morning.
So there's a need.
I'm speaking from experience, and like I
It's
said,
pretty
we
popular.
travel to, around to different places to be able to do that, so I'm just hoping that a park would be awesome, and putting a pickleball court too. Within, and it's the fastest growing sport in America.
I never see this.
And, you could have a playground where the parents even are able to do an activity where the children are also in proximity that they can monitor them at the same time. So,
Nice.
so thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for the.
You are Pickler. Pickler, that's me.
There's a lot of people play that damn sport.
Anything else at this time? We'll go on to more into detail.
Transportation?
Appreciate it, yeah, so and we go to transportation next.
Yep.
I had the population part, seeing we just talked about housing.
Okay.
I don't know what you-
Well,
but-
the population, there are only just a couple of minor edits from what you guys saw. It was the corrections. Let me see.
It's pretty straightforward, Zach.
Yeah. So just a couple of red line changes from what you had last time.
There's a typo.
Yep.
One.
Well, and so it's scrolling through that, so one of the reasons why we get all this background information is when it does get time to sort out the goals and objectives, this could inform the type of parks that would be included in there. So if the population is aging, you're probably not gonna put in a skate park and a bunch of basketball courts. You know,
Skateboard park, that'd be fun.
So we'll do transportation.
Yep.
Hey, Zach, I got a question for you. So we're gonna talk about this right now, but, because this is the first time I've been through this, we're gonna make this recommendation for this master plan to the board. So what we're talking about here is just, we're kind of vetting for the board, right?
Yep, so by default, the Planning Enabling Act says the Planning Commission makes and adopts the master plan. However, the local unit of government's legislative body can say by resolution, we actually want to be the deciders. We got elected, this is important, we want to do it.
Because everything else we do is recommend approval, recommend this, so,
Yep.
so we're recommending, I would assume.
My understanding is that the township board wants to be the approving body.
So, okay.
So you're working for them, you're preparing the best you can.
Who works for us?
And then the process will be, once you've got something that you think is pretty good, you will recommend to the township board that they distribute it. And they have, whether or not they're the approving authority, they have to approve the distribution, and then everyone gets copies and has 63 days to comment. And then it comes back for public hearing before you guys, and then recommendation to the township board.
Yeah, the funds.
All right, for transportation analysis, again, it was a working copy. We wanted to get you as much information ahead of time, so the stuff with yellow is still stuff to be worked out. For transportation analysis, we obviously start with roads because that's the most important transportation in the township. We talk about the different classifications of roads. This is a pared down version from what you currently have. I don't think everyone needs to know all the details about principal arterials, just if you get an idea of what they are, and then we say here are the ones you have. We did add the nice little chart there that you scroll past. It says here are your roads in this category. You have a map now in your current master plan that shows it, but we figured it's nice to have it in text, and there will be a map delineating them by the different categories as well. We've included urban areas information in there, and that's because there are different funding sources for quote-unquote urban areas, and there's a definition for that. And the northern part of Tyrone Township is part of the Flint urban area, so you're able to pull funds from a different pot from the Federal Highway Administration for improvements for roads or paths in that area. So that's why we've got it there. Traffic volumes. It's important to understanding what capacity the roads can take, and if a dirt road can take a lot of houses or not. There's a natural carrying capacity where it gets above a certain point, the roads start to deteriorate, so that's why that's addressed in there. Livingston County Road Commission has really good information. Basically, almost every single road segment in the township, they've got some number. And we've got the maps that are showing that. I do have a question at this point. You'll see a lot of yellow at the top of page 7.4. Level of service. So when people talk about traffic, it's not necessarily the traffic volume that they're discussing or feeling, it's the level of service. So level of service is how much longer does it take for you to get through something beyond if there's no one else there and you're doing it in the middle of the night. And they have a ranking A to E based on how long that delay is. It's usually the most informative topic for developments. However, it's not a metric that the Road Commission just has available. It's usually done as part of a specific study. So if that's something that you want to include, we'd have to work at gathering or collecting that, or we can just say we're aware that there are areas where their level of service changes or challenges, and we can include some references from what we get in the survey and the visioning sessions where people say, I have to sit here forever at 5 p.m. and say that in these areas where we know there's poor level of service, make sure you do traffic study as part of any project. So are folks okay with that general identification of here are areas of concern based on what we've heard and observed?
In general, it's gonna land right around the 23 in those exits.
Mm-hmm.
There is probably some others also.
Now, one other thing that's common for roads that you don't have in here currently is Pacer rating, and that's a metric that measures the quality of the road surface. There's a very defined standard based on if it was paved today, it's perfect. If it's like Runyon Road was, then it's awful. And there's, again, a bunch of metrics. I wasn't able to find any information from Livingston County Road Commission. throughout the township. It's generally done only for paved roads, because that's the one that the most monies go to. My question is, do you need to have that information to inform your roads, or can you just take the information from the survey and community session, visioning sessions where folks say, here's where the roads are good or bad?
When do you think it was just redone? Well, if you do that, but yeah, it's now, don't use it as your reference.
Yeah.
It's actually really nice.
That's why I said before, when it had Ann Arbor cobblestone fence.
It's very nice.
So I guess the question would be, would folks be comfortable just using the anecdotal information we gathered from the survey and the visioning sessions to say, here are areas where there are challenges with the road quality?
Yeah, I think that would be okay. I think, you know, if we had more, I guess you would call it decision-making or control over those roads, it would be more
Yeah, I think
beneficial to us to have those ratings, but.
People need to know that the township doesn't do the paving, they don't control what Livingston County wants to do with the roads. And to an extent, we can encourage them to do some
Right.
things, but when it comes push and shove, if you want a road paved and the county isn't willing to, or the state willing to ante up some funds, then it would simply be on the backs of the members of the community here.
Yep. So, I guess I'll say some of the ways that communities will use Pazer rating. So cities and villages can use it to identify their capital improvement plan, because they're in charge of the roads. Some townships do have kind of road committees and a road village or special assessment districts, and they kind of use this as the basis of, here are our areas of concerns, and we want to keep the good roads good, and then gradually work to get the bad ones better. But if there's not an interest in doing that in the next probably 10 years, it'd probably be best to leave all that detailed stuff to the next iteration of this.
But it's hard to know what the roads will be like in 10 years.
Yeah, how much work is it to do that and at least have that information in this iteration?
Well, I can contact the folks at the road commission again and see what they've got.
I think it'd be valuable to have that, at least that information in there.
Yeah, if it's a simple thing to gather, it's not gonna hurt us, right?
Cause that's really, I think
Pazer
roads
is-
are like one of the biggest complaints we get in the township beyond maybe nuisance reports, right?
I get a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
Carrie, why haven't you been doing something?
I know that,
I know.
it's kind of funny, but.
But you keep saying the same thing over and over, because I have no control.
Yeah, I just, somebody found out I was on the planning commission, like, could you get running like road paved? And I'm like, I have no control over that, and it was getting paved, I said, hey, guess what, I got running like free.
That sounds
It
nice,
had
but-
nothing to do with it, it's something Riley trucks out there.
I will work at collecting that. One other question I have is whether or not you guys want to explore truck routes, identification of ones that exist, or potential limitations for them in the future.
Yes, please.
How much authority do you have to restrict them?
Well, you can't restrict them from US 23 or state highways, but on all the other roads, the local unit of government can designate this is a truck route or no through trucks.
Thank you.
You
That's
have,
beneficial,
okay.
to know where we could potentially at least
Right.
have the ability to restrict them if people are upset. I know I lived on the Wet Lake Road when the gravel pit opened back up, and every morning, starting about 6:30 or 6 or 5:30 rather, all summer long, it was just bang, 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 and we're going down and coming back, and we were right to the top of the pines. It was just so loud that it was crazy.
That's Hogan Road right now.
Yeah,
And
I can
dust,
imagine. So I
dust.
think, yeah,
Okay, we'll
Yep.
add some exploration to that. Now, just be ready that if the township does go down the truck route designation or no through trucks, you have to allow trucks to get to gravel. But for example, you could say no through trucks on Germany. Just there's no need for through trucks, on these other roads.
more information, I think more information is always worthwhile.
All right.
Right.
We've added a bit of information for carpool lots, that came up as part of the survey question, just to document what's going on. The commuting section, we're gonna populate that with what we hear from folks on where they commute and how long they commute. And there is some information from the American Community Survey where they ask the question, how long is your commute? So we can say, according to the ACS, the average commute for Tyrone Township residents is X minutes per day. Construction and maintenance, that's where we reiterate that the township isn't in charge, it's Livingston County Road Commission. Document that you don't have any special assessments or millages for it. And a little quirk here, even though MDOT is responsible for US 23, they basically subcontract that to the Livingston County Road Commission. So here it says MDOT's responsible, but they have someone do it for them. Let's see, for public transportation, there is some available here. We wanted to document it. It wasn't very well documented in the current one. You've got Let's that will take you to connect with the folks in Genesee and down to Ann Arbor area, and they will take you a lot of places if you need to do it for medical. Pedestrians and bicycles. As you all know, there's not a lot here. If you are on foot or on bicycle, it's basically limited to the smaller developments. We do reference a couple of the nearby communities. So Argentine Township has their laugh trail that goes through there.
That is one thing we did talk about, trying to connect to that in some manner, to Laugh Pathway. If there's a way for us to manner to that, I think people would appreciate that.
Yep, and so this is another great example of where we're going to sprinkle in some flavor from the survey and the community visioning sessions. Is we can say, we asked the question about, I can't remember exactly how it's phrased, but is there an interest in pathways? And so we can say 84% of the respondents said they supported pathways.
So, in your experience, Zach, when there's a pathway that's put in, who is that? Do they have to get an easement through people's property?
It depends.
Or is it, hey, it's part of the government's property now and it's ours? How does that work? Just curious.
So the easiest way to do it is if you can do it within an existing road right of way. So if you had, well, I'm going to use the example down by where I live, Dexter and Chelsea. So some folks a couple years ago wanted to have a loop from Dexter to Chelsea, up to Stockbridge, over to Pickney and back down. So like a 70-mile loop on your bike off from the road. And they initially wanted to connect Dexter and Chelsea. It's only like 8 miles between them. That section is going to probably be the last section built because of acquiring land and challenges with that. Whereas the section going out of Chelsea, there's M52, and they have like a 100-foot right of way, so MDOT's like, yeah, come build a trail here, we can do it. In the case of the Dexter Chelsea, there was actually an ancient interurban railroad that got property that they never built it, but it still existed and it defaulted to the road commission. The road commission said, you can come and build a trail, but it's a weird thing. It can either be done by purchase or by lease. It's a lot easier if it can be within some public body.
The city of Linden is having that issue right now with eminent domain in regards to extending the laugh.
And that's what I'm asking. So if you have, let's say it's on Running Lake and you put a pathway 30 feet off it, does it extend that the right of way 30 more feet into that property from the pathway, or is it still from the road?
So for most of the roads, most of the rural roads, they'll have a 66-foot right of way, which is 4 rods. It's a magical thing that they had back in the day. And whenever possible, they try to fit the path within that because they can do whatever they want to do within that. If they can't because of topography or there's too many trees or something, then they would have to buy it from the property owners either through eminent domain or through just regular purchase.
Just good things to think about when
Yep.
we're talking about this. How does it really impact people who have land or?
And one other very easy way, I actually know the lady at ITC responsible for this, but ITC is very easy to work with in allowing pathway construction through their properties.
And I know we do have those powers, but I don't know if they would anywhere run into city of Fenton. It seems like the
No,
closest
it's-
place that this pathway's gonna come, but.
Yep, that's, it doesn't go where you want it to go, but it's easy to do. So we did reference that in here, we've added pedestrians and bicycles. We talked about air transportation, and again, that's kind of important for the type of business you may be able to attract. Reference Detroit Metro, Flint Bishop, Oakland County, and Price's Airport, just a mile north of your boundary.
Just a quick, maybe, I don't wanna get us way off topic, but as regards to air transportation. Have you seen any, in your experience so far, people doing zoning regarding drones?
We did that at the city of Dexter, and what we found is we have very little control once it gets above the ground.
Cause I know currently there's some things, Livingston County planning, they're talking about, there's like this webinar or something.
Yeah,
But, I was just curious because I know that for a fact, the southern end of our township is between two airspaces, between Flint and Metros. So then you see a lot of small planes there because they don't have to call into a tower. Just.
That's an FAA issue, right?
Yeah, once it gets up in the air, that's FAA.
Are you a pilot?
No, I know.
Now, my son's there got a controller, we were talking about that a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating. The way that the law works is if there's a drone floating above your property, you shoot it with a shotgun. It's the same as shooting at a Delta 747.
Yeah, you're in big trouble.
Well, I don't mind it.
But the local community, it's generally through a police power ordinance where they can put limits to say if you're operating it without the license, you have to be within eyesight of the thing, and just to make sure it doesn't crash into anybody or something, but, once folks get the license and it's up in the air, it's.
Yeah, you really didn't get too far, it's just a
Yep.
thought, I didn't know how anything's been going on there. I was a good summary of that, thanks.
A new section, we added just railroads. You guys obviously don't have any railroads, but you have railroads nearby. It's kind of important background because it may be useful for certain businesses or whatnot. Same thing for water. You don't have anything near you. For complete streets, Michigan Planning Enabling Act says you need to talk about complete streets, and that's the concept that when you're doing streets, it needs to be available for all types of street users, for cars and pedestrians and cyclists. In rural communities, it's kind of tough because it's really expensive to put a sidewalk a mile, right? But you currently have some language in there. It'll be a polished version of that and talk about how we can't really, there's not much we can do for these. We can encourage it and require it in developments, but.
Would this be like a new road or something? Is that where that?
Yep.
would apply?
Or if there's a site condominium next to the road, that's where you can say, we want you to put in a
Yeah.
path. The major trip generators or attractors, that's something that's gonna come primarily from the visioning session where folks identify spots where we know there are areas or uses that are going to generate a lot more traffic. We know there are the parks up that way. There are a couple of the gravel pits that are causing that, so that's kind of to document this here. Is there anything you think we've lost or we haven't included in the transportation section that will be necessary?
Seems pretty good to me.
All right. Well, the next version you guys will get have red lines from what you've seen here. And what else do we have?
I think the last one is our, which is the visiting sessions. This was,
All right.
the draft you sent for cross starters.
Okay, so for your master planning process, you guys said we wanted to have 4 community visiting sessions. which is on the upper end, but it's always good to get input from the community. Originally, we were gonna try to have one in each quadrant of the township, basically, but you said we'd like to have everyone, the whole band together. We don't wanna break the band up, the brass and the rhythm and all that stuff. So went and talked with some of the smarter folks at the company and said, how can we get meaningful feedback to them? Supervisor Cunningham said he wanted to make sure that there were some of these on weekends, so folks who work would be able to attend. So this is our kind of presenting to you. You guys should consider this, and if you like it, we'll run with it like we stole a bunch of money. So the idea is to have two groups of 2 sessions. The first group is where we're getting feedback on the various categories for the background. And the second group would be where 2 ways we can do that, where either we're testing to make sure we heard the information, or if we have developed goals and objectives, we can test those. So folks can say, yep, these are really important, or this goal objective is not important, cut it out there. So 2 groups of 2, each one would have a Wednesday session during your workshop here, and then a Saturday session. The goal is to have the members of the public on site for 2 hours. We find too much longer than that, and it gets tough to dedicate that time. If it's much less than that, it's difficult to get meaningful feedback from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, except we need to talk about Wednesday for 2 reasons. One, that apparently is a number of people go to church on Wednesday, and there was some concern about that. The other one is that if we hold them during the workshop sessions, we either can't do the work that the workshop session should hold, or we have to suspend the meeting when we want to have when we actually have to do some work and have a public hearing. Looking at the Wednesday timing, I would not be in objection to 1 or 2 of the meetings being on Wednesdays, but I don't think you can use Wednesday all the time. I think we have to shoot for Thursday, for example, as a day.
These are only 2 Wednesdays on this, because I'm seeing it, so
Yeah.
we're gonna shift them to Thursday?
My goal would be to come out of here tonight and you guys say, this is what we want for our visioning sessions. So we can start to develop the materials to support it, and you guys can start your publication so folks know to come out. So setting the dates today would be fantastic. And the reason why I put in September is I thought it was easier to do it on this date, but if you want to do it September 22nd, that Thursday, now's the time to make that.
Yeah, and then that's the workshop in September, for example.
Yep.
And that will give enough time to get the data from the survey compiled,
Yep.
which is good. And, I think it would work, it just, I think it would be best if that meeting is dedicated to vision session.
Because we
Like
did-
Kurt mentioned, where it's not a mixture of things, music.
Last week's meeting, there was actually more than a couple comments about Wednesday being, and I didn't know this, but big church night. So let's not do it on the same, I originally thought it'd be a good idea, but let's not do it on the same night as our workshop.
So Thursday, September 22nd?
Yeah, do you like that, Kurt? You were here, you heard it.
Yeah, there was, I think the input we got says that there are people who would normally attend who can't attend due to services on Wednesday night. And I'm thinking, in addition to that, it's difficult, as we had a public hearing tonight, to stop a visioning session that once we started it and say, okay, we're gonna have a public hearing. You know, plus the other end of it is too, as a workshop session, we have other things going on too, so it limits us to just our regular meetings for getting the regular work done that the planning commission does.
So what I've heard is Thursday the 22nd and Saturday the 24th of September are good for the first group.
I think that would be better, let's put it that way.
And I think I did check on the 24th, and I don't think there were any major college football conflicts with that.
How about in October? Do we have any October?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so the challenge, I'm just speaking of my own personal challenges of, it's hard to, one night a week, I make sure I can commit to that, and I take the time out of my family life, but 2 nights, or in this case, would be 3 days of the week, right, where I'd be gone for a good portion of the day. It's very difficult. Right, I'm not saying it can't be done, I'm just, it's a thing that, we have to have attendance from, we want attendance from the public, but we have to have attendance from the planning commission. Right, on a pretty large scale, when you're talking about breaking up in groups of 2, right, you have to have quite a few people here, we have to have almost all of us, I would imagine it. That's the challenge I see if we have a workshop.
To get it done,
then,
I'll do it to
you
you.
know, but that was where the thought of, hey, if you have it as your workshop meeting, then
Cancel the workshop.
then we have it, it's not a workshop, it's strictly.
I think for the benefit of getting this thing moving, we cancel the workshop.
And do the vision.
And do the vision section.
If we don't have pending. news
Or we just
No,
flat out
understood.
do it on the Wednesday and cancel the workshop.
But doing the Thursday,
The workshop.
it seems like, based on your guys' comments from the last meeting, would be
But
would be better for public attendance.
because of this religion.
Yep.
Church, so yes, I would
All right.
offer that we maybe postpone the work session. Or cancel it for September and do this, and have
The vision
Thursday
assessment on
visioning be our,
Thursday,
yeah, that's our,
22nd.
yeah, that's our thing. Because my opinion is that, just to move this along.
Yep. And so kind of the idea with the phasing where we wanted to have this first group kind of early as feasible is because information from there is going to help feed these background analysis articles. So we want to try to get that as fast as possible. And then the rationale for having the other one at the back end is it would allow time to develop some rough goals and objectives that you can test at that. So that's why there's got one right now and then one proposed for later. What do you folks think about the start time? So for the public, what we're proposing is the start time on the weekday session would be at 6 through 8. And
6 or 5.
so the schedule here is like.
Oh, I
the
see
whole
what you're
thing.
saying, yep.
Yeah, so we get here and we start to set up and do that stuff an hour ahead of time, and the public would arrive at 6. And then for the weekend, the way it's currently set up would be, they would come here at 9. Do those times work for your community and you guys?
Everyone sounds fine to me.
No, I know, I've got a wedding I can't get out of on the 4th, I'm afraid.
So, Zach, is the intent there is that these would be 2 separate vision sessions?
Yep.
Make sure, okay.
Yep, so it would allow folks an opportunity to come to one or the other, or depending on how we structure it later on, they may want to come to both.
Zach, is it normal to have 2, like literally back to back, and then have a 6-week gap, and then have 2 more? Because this is basically what it looks like to me.
That looks like we're skipping October.
Yeah, is that standard? Because we did have someone mention October. Is that normal?
There is no standard.
There's no normal.
So, what I'm thinking, Zach,
Extra in
just the
October.
comments is that possibly we're talking Thursday, and this one maybe would be the first week of October. And I understand with October, gun season, I think there's a lot of people that travel and are out of town, but the first week of October, that's November, so it does get into hunting season. I think it wouldn't be as big of an impact as maybe you think, but I don't know if that's why you avoided October.
Well, no, the idea was that because they're,
Time to get.
November, actually.
Yep, so
November is where
The
it
hunting
gets
season,
by
yeah, by
Thanksgiving,
starts,
and,
yeah.
the idea was that the session, the one on Thursday and Sunday are essentially the same thing, but we're trying to collect information from folks who may not be able to come on a Thursday.
Oh,
From folks on Saturday, so it's the same program essentially.
So we're doing 2 visioning sessions altogether. They're just being done twice. I guess I was anticipating we would have 4 visioning sessions, each one being different as opposed to just 2 and just doing them twice. I don't know how you're gonna get through all the information that people either wanna have brought up or discussed or whatever. That seems, it's,
It's 2 for the public.
Well, and part of the reasoning behind that is there was interest in making sure that folks can attend on the weekend, could attend on a weekday, and vice versa. And so if we have one that talks about, for example, just transportation on Thursday, but they can't come, it's a challenge to get their input then on the weekend.
okay, but I guess, what are you going to cover in 2 sessions that we thought we needed 4 for? How are you going to cram that much information into 2 sessions? In essence, we're reducing 4 sessions into 2, we're just doing them twice.
Well, and the original thought with the 4 sessions was it would essentially be the same program but focused on this area. So we would ask all the transportation, housing, economic development questions in the northeast quadrant, in the northwest quadrant, in the southeast, and the southwest.
I thought we had 4.
Yeah.
In fact, I can remember coming up with them. I don't have them written down in front of me here. We had 4 separate things that we thought that each visioning session would support.
And on that, Kurt, if you wanna do this on Thursday and Saturday to try to accommodate everyone, which I kinda like, but I think we should do it also Thursday, Saturday in October to do at least 3, if we're gonna do, you know, like Kurt said, basically we're doing 2 of the same one, so we're only gonna do actually 2 sessions. And we talked about this with the township expense as well. I think we should do add an October session, and I'd be happy with this personally. Because this would get, and people would come in and bring up other things. I'm sure we're not gonna say, hey, no, we're not gonna listen to what you wanna say. But we did talk about 4, and now we're basically going down to 2 of this, 2 twice, basically. So I'm personally, if you guys can do it, you know, your business can do it, I'd like to do them sometime in October. I do have a minor concern, I'm not 100, but man, if you're 100, you're not gonna be there in November.
November 16th might be
that's
sparsely attended.
You know, if you could back it up a week, I would think that would be good.
That puts us into Thanksgiving.
No, back it up.
Early.
Okay.
Back it up 1 week prior. I would think, personally, if you can do that, I would prefer that, because I do have.
Yeah, these were pulled from.
Who wouldn't want to come in on the 16th, it probably wouldn't be much good to us.
Yep. So these dates were picked from when you guys had workshops. So the idea that you guys already have that date reserved and you know to come here just to have it.
Right.
So that's where these were picked. If you move it forward a week, you have your regular session on Tuesday.
I don't want to speak for the group, but I would prefer to do it a week before, on the Thursday, not right the day after opening season, opening day, and I'd like to do one in October. Actually, 2 in October, if this is the format we're gonna go with. We're gonna do to accommodate people, which we heard at the last meeting, that didn't like only the Wednesday, and now we're going to Thursday. I think that makes sense.
What about both? One Wednesday and then one Thursday? I'm just saying that might, is that too confusing?
No, because you need a
Okay.
Saturday for people.
And Saturdays.
So they're working.
No, we're gonna go.
Yeah,
think
I
we
just
should stick
meant-
with with that Thursday.
Okay,
Oh, I
Because
see
that
what
was
you're saying.
Yeah.
completed last time, so let's stick to Thursday, Saturday.
Thursday, Saturdays.
I do like that.
All right.
And I do think we should kick the first one off in, at the 9:20, was it 9:22? Yeah, 9:22, 9:24 to get this thing going.
All right, well, I will say that let's work through the outline here, if you guys wanna split it up. I would caution if we're collecting a bunch of information in October, that would limit its ability to feed the stuff that's gonna be reviewed a month later.
Let's do it 3 weeks after the 9:22. It gives you guys 3 weeks to get it together.
It gives us a week and a half.
No, if we're
Well,
going
cause
9:22,
you're gonna wanna have it a week ahead of time.
9:22, and then we'll go 3 weeks after that, which will put us in mid-October, and then we'll go first week in November. I mean, it's close enough. I just don't think we get, maybe it's just me, but I don't think you get, for the people I know that are out here, if they're the people that would come to these meetings, it's probably not. You're not getting people on 11/16 to come to these.
Yeah, well, my understanding is we move that forward a week.
Right. So that puts us at less than 3 weeks after October.
Yeah. Well,
Well, yeah,
I mean, what do
the
you think?
November one, Rich, I don't know what.
well, let me say, there are a couple of ways that these could be split out further. So the current one, again, the structure was to allow kind of one on weekdays for folks who can attend and one on weekends. So for example, we're gonna have proposing 6 breakout sections, in the first group that largely mirrors the different sections of your background. So housing, transportation, economics, those such of things. And the way that it's currently set is with rotation, someone there would be able to attend 3 of those at one meeting, because we've got 3 20-minute rotations. If you would, one way to slice it up differently would be the first one, we're gonna talk about these 3 things. The next one, on Saturday, we're gonna talk about these 3 other things. So that might be a way also
Yeah.
to slice it up.
So, yeah, as long as they're clearly defined ahead of time, and then people know what, how all of us.
My only thought is that, we've had a lot of comment here, especially at the last meeting, about people that thought that we weren't providing enough opportunity for people to speak. So, if they come to a session where something has been discussed, can they bring up something that's already been discussed and add their comment to it? Like, if they come there if something, like you just said, you're gonna split it up, and if they come down on Saturday, and was talked about on Thursday, can they still sort of have, my opinion is, why couldn't that be brought up?
Yep, so there's usually a practice where we have a board or somewhere for folks can put any input they want. It would be, so generally when you break up into the groups, that's when you get the most discussion and the cross-fertilization. It would be hard if one were talking at transportation, housing, and community facilities, if someone wants to talk about economic development, because it's just not really set up to do it that well.
Just a thought on November, to pull that ahead a week, the Tuesday before, that's election day.
Do you wanna forget the
So it might-
October one?
The November, I'm just talking November.
No, I think we should
November,
go
we
that
might
way.
have to stay where it is, cause I don't think we could.
Yeah, go look up and see when our meetings are.
Yeah.
Because I believe that they have changed the, normal procedure for the, normal dates for the board meeting also.
Because of the hunting season?
No, because of the election.
Oh, yeah.
First Tuesday is the election, and I think.
Second, yeah, it's 11/8.
Well, I mean, for the board, it is. I think they moved the board meeting.
So election would be the 8th, November 8th.
November 2nd.
Yep.
That document was signed in January, though.
16th.
It would be an addendum to that.
The 8th is the election, so the 2nd is the first.
That's a planning commission. Board.
Board is
Yeah, so the 16th for an 11 would work.
Unless you're concerned with,
I mean, I can please everybody.
No, that's, we can do the other ones on
Let's do it.
Thursdays.
I mean, you know,
Can, I have a question. Can people be on Zoom, make comments on the visionary sessions?
I sure hope so.
Don't know.
it gets trickier with the breakout sessions, kind of for the big group stuff. It's possible, and a lot of visioning sessions were done with Zoom during COVID times. It's more the big, kind of the group thing as opposed to small groups, just from a technical capacity side.
And good luck with that, Steve.
So let's solve this first group. Do you wanna have the first group, the Thursday and the Saturday, have the same six topics, or do you wanna pick 3 topics for one and 3 topics for the next?
You said we do 6 on both days?
That's what we were proposing, so
Let's
yeah.
do it, let's do that. Let's get as much input as we can. Is there any problem with that? To me,
People are only
why
gonna
not
come
get
once.
as much input as we can on both days?
So with the time schedule, it's difficult to fit within 2 hours, someone being able to go to all 6 kind of stops.
20 minutes a session, that seems like enough to talk about. If you're that concerned, you could stick around with that session, correct? Or do you start one and start the next, is that the way this works?
Yep, we start, you get the 3 to 6 people there, you talk about the topic, you kind of identify things that are important, stop clock, boom, and you go to the next.
That doesn't leave time to go to the bathroom or,
It's tight.
yeah.
So if somebody wanna talk about it, but you had someone that was willing to stick around and continue from the board or someone and continue to have that conversation, you could do that, so you're not gonna gather information, what's the concern about that?
Could you phrase that another way?
In other words, if someone still had things on their mind, could you go back around, okay, then at the end, okay, let me rephrase that. At the end, if you had things that people wanna bring up, could you go back then and pick things up that were still trailing, that were not addressed?
So the way that this is generally scheduled, you have the small groups, and then you kind of report back, and then you have some sort of discussion or voting, or people put stickers on things to say, yes, we agree with that.
I don't think personally, other than the times I've been here, that if you can manage comments, that 20 minutes should be a problem.
And how are we gonna be recording the comments? Somebody's gonna be writing them down or
Yep.
recording?
Basically, we're challenging the planning commission members to be the leaders at the different stations.
Oops. Oops.
You've got specific guidance.
But there's only different stations, no, at the stations, because we're switching stations. You're not talking about having parallel stations going on, is the way I'm understanding it, correct?
You have 6 sessions going.
One corner here, corner here, corner.
Oh, so it's gonna go continuously then?
Yes.
Oh, then there is plenty of time for people to comment.
Well, but remember, if you want everyone to go to everything, and you're gonna be at 20 minutes, and you have 6 topics, that's 2 hours with just that.
Yeah.
That's no time to discuss at the end, that's no time to provide background on here's the stuff we received at the beginning.
Do 15 minutes then.
I'm
That's
not-
an hour and a half.
Excuse me, but I'm not following this. If you're saying we're gonna have planning commission members at each session, and they're gonna be 20 minutes,
We're gonna always split up.
rotate through, how, if somebody wants to go, if there's a community member that wants to go back to the first session, what's gonna prevent them from going back and commenting again if we're gonna rotate through it?
I think what the plan is assuming is that, say somebody from the public comes in, that they're gonna spend 20 minutes at each spot. Well, like you're saying, Steve, if maybe it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, why can't we go back?
Yeah, why couldn't
And they could, but then you're, potentially you have other people still doing input.
I don't think it's gonna be that busy personally. I can just-
Yeah, obviously it depends on the volume, but.
I feel like 20 minutes is a long time.
Yeah.
I do agree
That,
with
I
that.
mean, that's a lot of, if there's, say there's 3 people at each station, yeah, that'd be the fullest I've ever seen this place. I mean, 20 minutes to talk about one topic, that would seem what you like and what you wanna see, what you don't wanna see.
So do you anticipate a large turnout for these visionings?
I mean, that's what we wanna see.
Yeah, because I went to one when we first moved here about 13 years ago, and it was a pretty good turnout. It was at the church near the Rock, I think it was. And I thought it was a pretty good turnout. They did a good job. I don't remember who it was, but.
It needs to be advertised.
No, sir.
Nobody knows about it.
I think they proposed to put these
I
signs
think
in
planning
the
sessions
Yep.
that are pretty
signs in,
robust.
like with the asphalt.
The way you're
Same thing.
setting it up
We have,
right now, you have.
we have signs on every road.
A station for this topic, and then one commissioner be there, yeah, like feedback.
Yeah.
Have them
And
everywhere.
then you have a different one for each.
Yep.
I think that's reasonable, and then, if it, you know, depending on how many people attend, change how much time we have.
Yeah, can we adapt the time depending on how many people that show up? Like, could we say it's gonna be 20 minutes, and then say we're sitting in here and there's 2 or 3 people at each station, it's like, all right, it's not set in stone, it doesn't need to be 20 minutes, let's
Yeah.
split it out to 10.
Everyone's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if
Shorter.
we look around, people are all there on their phones, they're moving along, so that there's more time for other stuff at the end.
Ring a bell or something, we'll go ding, we're gonna move.
The other thing that I think needs to be brought up is, if you're expecting each one of us to run one of those stations, I'm not sure everybody knows how or what or.
Yep, and that's
How to do
why,
that.
Yeah.
that's why in the schedule, we plan on staff and us getting here an hour ahead and setting stuff up. And planning commissioners arriving half an hour before the public, so we can talk through who wants to talk with transportation, who wants to do this. Here's the rundown of how you're gonna get people to talk and what you're to record. So that is baked into the schedule.
Giving us a little rundown.
I mean, I can do that because I know how to do that and I've done it professionally.
Exactly.
I'm not sure everybody else has up here.
And you're gonna need 6.
Yeah, I don't know.
And as it
6
is,
of everyone.
I know I won't be at one of the
You
sessions.
know, Garrett throwing down the gloves.
Yeah, I talk about building houses, but when it comes to some of this other stuff,
Well, and your job isn't to be the category expert, it's to facilitate conversation, folks.
But you have to be a facilitator.
I understand that, but they're still going to ask questions. Well, why can't we talk about this? And how do we go over here? And then if they find out how really dumb we really are, we're gonna have a problem.
No, exactly, the thing I.
That's on a sign.
Is there a general, like when you talk about, let's say, some of the topics here, economics, right? You can talk about economics for a few days straight if you want, especially right now. Jesus. But, what, you know, maybe this isn't a topic, this is just an example. Like, for purpose of us, like transportation, you can ask, hey, what's good about it or what's bad about it right now, and what's your idea that would help our township and do in the future?
Yep. So,
You know, it's gotta be kind of boiled down to those 3 things.
yeah, so a very simple version on page 3 has basic guide for station leaders, which is what we run through, remind folks of the day. We try to keep it simple, so it's not exactly a script, but say, hey, I'm, on the planning commission, I'm gonna try to facilitate the discussion on economics. We've got this background information here, you've kind of seen it. And then talk about, what should the township do relative to this? What are the good things for the economics, for the business community, what are the challenges? And try to get folks to come up with 3 of each, and then just, okay, we've heard all these things, what do you think are the most important for you?
Because it's one thing to stand up and write questions and that people have. It's a whole nother thing to be able to try to lead the process through, write down the gist of what people's complaints, issues, or questions are, and then also be coming up with the 3 most important things, or the 5 most important things. That's.
You don't have to come up with that, you make them write theirs down, and then at the end you say, okay, we've heard these things.
I
What's the most
understand that,
important?
but you may be refereeing too, because if you've got one person that wants to monopolize stuff and somebody else that isn't saying anything and things like that, you also have to guide the process through.
Yeah, there's certainly a skill set being a facilitator, something like this, and I mean, I try my best, but.
And folks are generally understanding. So the other option, which based on my understanding of the previous sessions where you did have large turnout, is you just have one giant session. And you have me and Mr. Luan facilitate. We're gonna talk about transportation for the next 20 minutes. We're gonna talk about, or for the next 15 minutes. The advantages, you've got someone who's done it and has facilitated these things. The disadvantage is if you've got a large group, people can't participate as much just because of the math.
I think that's still a better way though. I think it's a grasp to say, okay, the 4 or 5, 6 or 7 of us are going to run sessions and try to produce some sort of product out of it that is the questions or recommendations or whatever you want to call it. I think we'd be better off than to just do a general visioning session, which is what I anticipated we were going to do, and then have you experts help guide the process through. You know the master plan, you understand where we're trying to go. We're providing input for you to help draft a master plan or come up with ideas, suggestions, recommendations, whatever.
I like that, because if we did that way, then we wouldn't need to go through any kind of training. We could really kick it off right from the beginning, to go through your introduction, and then that would allow us sometime at the end, in my opinion, to have additional comments at the end, maybe an open comment session. If we didn't have to go through any kind of training for us, we'd just sit there and try to observe and, because I personally, like I said, I would try to do my best to facilitate this, but I have no idea what I'm doing on that, and I would not want to produce information that wasn't the intent of the group.
Well, you don't want to stand up there and tell them wrong things.
Exactly, I'm trying to keep up with this, but I think if you guys are the facilitators and you've done this and you can keep it moving, and we could do 20 minutes, say, we're gonna do this 20 minutes, everyone make your comments succinct, let's keep them to 2 or 3 minutes at the most and go through this. And then if we maybe go a little longer, we could use some of this time at the end, but try to keep it tight. Especially, one thing I've noticed with other planning commissions I've been to, is they don't let people repeat what other people have said. I've been like down in Ryan Township, doing some stuff down there, and if you're saying what someone else has said, man, they'll hammer it down to it.
Yeah.
Already heard it, Jackson.
And that's
like,
part of our
done.
introduction where we say, you know, if once you spoke, step back and let other folks.
And don't repeat what someone else has said.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify what he just said, you know, that's what you run into. I want to hear you clarify. I could hear exactly what he said.
Yeah, and Zach, so in this way, where it's a larger one, and obviously if we go into that and we do that for the first one, we find out hey, there's way too many people, right, that we have to break it up, and we could, right? It's not like we're locked into, hey, this is how we have to do the remainder, which I understand, it's easier and better to communicate one plan of action and stick with it.
Yep. The caution would be if the first one, folks don't feel like they're able to contribute, they're probably not gonna come back for the second or third, or fifth or sixth.
Yeah.
Well, they're not gonna wanna come to the second one anyway, because the next one is the repeat of what we just did, correct? So if they were here on Thursday, there's no sense of them coming on Saturday, because we're just gonna go over the same stuff that we went over on Thursday, right?
Well,
It's
so,
another opportunity for them to bring up their points.
so it was originally structured, they would have been able to participate in different stations that they didn't get to participate in the first time. But, so that, it was kind of designed and timed so that if you came on one day, you could go to the 3 most important. If you wanted to come to both, then you could go to everything. But so what I'm hearing, and so what I propose, instead of 6 different groups, in order to gather more information, that we have 2. And we have 2 Carlisle Workman staff kind of trying to run, so we break it up.
Is that normally how it would be done?
This was, this version here is, we've used it 5 or 6 times the past couple of years with people leading it.
There's planning commission members leading.
Yep.
And other.
Yep. But there are also, where we know there's gonna be smaller turnout, we'll facilitate it to help try and make it going on. I cannot promise more than 2 staff, because that's what the budget is. If we bring more people, then it's, you add on another $150 an hour.
In your experience, a township of our size, what do you anticipate?
Based on what 13 years ago, it was much higher than is typical for most communities. But it'll depend on your ability to publicize it, primarily.
So, you think we'll be 50 people, 10 people?
How many were at the last one? It was closer to the 50.
Yeah, it was a huge number.
That's years ago, yeah.
But we did have enough time for everyone to be able to share, but they use sticky notes, so if you had a duplicate, like for me, I want a pickleball course, but my friend also, that, you know, we're driving other places, she wants it also. So she's not gonna go up and necessarily make a public notice, but could she write it on like a sticky note so that they can have their voice also heard in another form?
I've been at board meetings when questions will be written on cards, and they will flip through them and find, you know, we have 3 questions on this general topic, and they'll bring it up, and that will kind of start that. That's something else.
Yep. And the way it would be generated here is that at the end, we say, here are the things that this group talked about. And we get the sticky things where people can go and say, yes, pickleball is a part of pickleball, or whatever. So, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. Can the member of our community be a facilitator? My husband took a classes at MSU on a master plan. So can he be helpful to you? Specifically took classes on that. If you could use him. He's a public speaker, so he can.
He took the class that was offered to you guys.
The master plan from MSU. If he could be included in it as a one of, you know.
There's also somebody who comes to meetings who's a professional facilitator. But again, that would be involving.
That would be helpful for you, so, I mean, meet with that person before and talk and ask questions. And maybe you'll see if you can use them or not. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I guess we gotta decide how we want them to go. We can talk about that.
They were told.
Right now, what you propose is
Is in the bin.
yeah, chunk, yeah. So, yeah, it's tough, you know, there's a lot of different input. My original thought was that it would take the place of our workshop meetings, and that would be it. Because then it's one part of the week, and people know we gather on that day and that evening, and it's already published. But then there is all this other input, right? You don't get the people who, hey, they work all week, they might not show up in the evening, working through shit or whatever. And you have people who attend church regularly on Wednesdays, so you would never be able to make it to a Wednesday workshop. So that was my thoughts prior to that. All this feedback.
We heard a lot of comments about that last week, and that's why we kind of talked about shifting it. And, we got quite a few new people here tonight. And that was a real big point they made. I would like to stick with a
But
Thursday.
one of the key,
And cancel the work session in September. And, you know,
Yeah, understood.
I'll give her for 3.5 hours.
Well, I'm just saying, one of the key items of all this is that the planning commission needs to to take in all this input, right?
The facilitating part.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Yeah, that is what I think is the biggest concern.
So I guess, Zach, we're looking at you guys to facilitate the meeting.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
and about that, Zach, is it as, when you talk about these topics, right, it's easy to, as we know, right, during our meetings, it's easy to start talking about one thing that maybe that pertains
pretty
to some
ruthless.
specific thing, but it's not, as what would be defined as the scope of the master plan, right? It's maybe the scope of a zoning ordinance, but not the master plan. So then, is there templated questions on these topics that beforehand could be published? That way people can gather their thoughts and have their, maybe they have it written down when they come, and then it makes it easier for members of the public to give input, because they can put their thoughts on paper prior to it.
Yep.
You know, and then it's easier to gather it. Let's say maybe you get in a situation where there's so many people, then you can, as mentioned, you take down like a sticky note or a card, and then you have it.
The aim is to have a general description of what we're gonna be asking, not the specific questions, but we're gonna be asking about transportation issues or road issues as part of the publication.
Yeah.
So
And
that
do you
folks
have
are
little
interested.
cards at each one that people can write and leave it with us?
Yeah, we have various.
It was just a simple way, then that way it's like, hey, well, what did they say? And you know, my interpretation of what they said is different than what they actually wrote. You know?
Will the topic of the visiting sessions be published on the township's website and broadcast? Because I get the general blast that everyone gets, and I think it'd be actually beneficial to say, hey, visiting session, this date, this time, this is gonna be talked about. Show up if you have a comment or would like to be involved.
Yeah, that'd be up to the clerk's office.
I would really.
At the
want
top.
that very strongly put out there.
And an email.
In our township blast that I get from, I'm sure everyone else gets it.
Well, I know WHMI will also do a public service announcement. I know Osceola Township was doing their master plan, and I heard we're having a master plan session on the 5th and 7th, and you're welcome to come to the township office for it.
So,
Be worthwhile.
I want to recap for the feedback. We're looking at Thursday the 22nd, Saturday the 24th, from 6 to 8 and then 9 to 11 for the public. We're gonna have the room divided into two for the specific topics. I think we're all together with that. Now, my question is gonna be, what are the topics that you want, and which ones do you want to go on which meeting? So what I've just got penciled in here is housing, economics, natural environment, transportation, community facilities, and public services. It roughly follows your background section.
Why would we not do that? Let's do it.
All right.
Is that 6 or 7?
Community facilities and public services are kind of together.
Oh, okay. But, yeah, I would just say, why not stick to that, which is something we've talked about extensively, and then have it, you get about a room and a half, I was correct? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
That makes, like I said, I've never gone through this, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and I think what Kurt had mentioned before, we had a top, like a list of items for them, and we had 4 maybe high level, 43 corridor type items, but I think probably as you know from your experience, Zach, that people want to give information on these smaller, maybe more specific items, like you mentioned, your housing, then the natural environment, those things, so, and we'll gather that data, that we wanted those high level topics through all this, so I think it's fun, to me, I don't.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah.
I'm just looking forward to actually getting one of these going. And we're gonna do 2 sessions in the same evening, split the subjects in 2, so it'll be 3 and 3.
Yes.
Okay. So if it's a 2-hour session, it will be much more than 20 minutes per sess.
Well, there's also kind of the general,
Okay.
where you come back.
But it'll give us more time to talk about it.
So we're doing 2 sessions the same night? Or are we talking about one big session the same? Everybody is sitting in the same session?
The room is split into 2.
Two sessions where then you have 2 members.
Like a breakout, right?
Yeah, so I'd be talking about transportation, Mr. Lawan will be talking about housing on the other side.
And you'll do it twice.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
That we can do.
So what then, unless there are any objections, what I would propose is that the background articles that are pretty well polished would be the first one, the first session, and the ones that are still being put together would be the second, just so we have more time to gather that
Yeah.
bit. So we would have three essentially the first meeting and then 3 of them in the second. Does that sound like a good place? And then we'll have a get together at the end, just like we planned here. That make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we at least have the first one, I think, settled up. And for my guidance, I want to revise this to make sure we all understand who wants to kind of bless it. Do you want me to send it to Mr. Nicholson, or Mr. Nicholson and Mr. Erickson?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the chair should give it his approval.
All right.
Just Ross or-
Do you guys want to talk about this, the next visioning sessions, or are you all
No.
sessioned out?
Let's get through the first one and maybe
Okay.
we'll have lessons learned.
I would say though, it would be beneficial at the first session to have at least an idea of when the next ones are gonna be, so we can say, hey, if you
Well,
like
we can
this,
pick
come
the
out.
dates, but I'd like to seriously do lessons learned before we go to number 2.
You can change the format, but kept the date set.
Are the surveys gonna be involved in it? The surveys? Are we gonna be?
Yep, I'll go back, that's gonna be included in the background,
Okay.
the surveys will be. I'll try to ask hopefully a less painful question, is there been suggestion of doing an October intermediary one? If we do the back group, if we split it out kind of a similar way, where we've got 2 halves, and the first one we talk about half of the things, and the second one we talk about half of the things, would that be consistent with your goals and visions?
You're asking for regarding October visioning session,
Well, for the second batch,
the second.
kind of
Yeah.
here are our goals, does it sound like we're playing it right?
Yeah. I think when the format should stay the same, then people will know what to
Yep.
expect and.
Yep.
But are you asking if we should do it or not, Zach? Or if we should change the format of it, or should we, are you saying, should we do it October? Should we do the same format, or should we just not do it?
Well, I'll explain why I have it in here for September and then November. So the idea is the first 2, we're collecting information that's going to feed the document. And then the second group, we've got some rough goals and visions based on what we've collected that you guys have been able to look at a work session and at a regular meeting, that we can come to the second group and say, here's what we think the goals and objectives should be. Did we hit it or did we miss it? And help us rank them. So that's why there's that gap to allow time for.
That makes
And that's the end.
Yeah.
That's it. So we basically do a Thursday with 2 sessions with 3 topics basically each
That's
session.
Saturday.
And we do Saturday, the same 3 topics on Saturday, right?
The other 3.
I thought we were doing the same topics both Thursday and Saturday, just, right?
My understanding is that there's an interest in breaking it up so that they weren't the exact same session, so that we have more time to talk about.
No, I don't think that's what I was not hearing that at all. I was hearing that we were gonna do Thursday, we're gonna break into 2 sessions with 3 topics per session. And then Saturday, if people couldn't make those sessions, or Thursday, they couldn't make that, they come on Saturday and talk about the
Same opportunity.
groups with 3 topics in each group. Did I not hear that right?
That's what I thought.
That is what I thought I heard.
We talked about both ways of doing it.
No, I think we definitely don't wanna have a different group of things talked about on Saturday that we're not talking about Thursday, because that totally defeats the whole purpose of having 2 separate meetings. I don't like that. If we're gonna do a Saturday and a Thursday, it should be the same thing.
Identical.
Okay,
Talk
that was
about
what
both.
was proposed. I heard there was interest in that.
No.
Why are we doing the same thing twice?
No.
Yeah, we were, but I can see what we're trying to do here, and I think that's probably a better way to, get the same thing. We just have to let people know that, if they attended the Thursday session, they really don't need to come to the Saturday.
Well, except for the way the schedule falls, if you're on this side of the room with Doug for the whole sessions, then there are 3 of the topics you didn't get to talk about. So that's when you can come back Saturday and go to the other side.
I think that's actually outstanding.
This is
Okay.
very important.
I
If
definitely wanna
somebody's
have
gonna
that.
I think
bring
I got
it
that.
in our community.
Then I don't think we need, if you're saying that we have that much input that we don't need the October, then that's fine.
Because I live by
That's
big
your
farm.
professional opinion, I'll
If they sell it to a
agree with that.
solar power.
All right.
I don't want
Yeah, I think it'd
what's
be better
more.
than planning on it, than saying, oh, we're not gonna have it, because we don't have enough data.
Yeah.
I think it's better to plan for it.
Yeah,
We've come a long way from my
Yeah, I know.
my
Right.
initial
Yeah.
thoughts of where we were, so yeah, I like that. But
This is a good start.
Because actually what we're doing is if you look at the way we're setting it up, with 2 sessions on 2 days, we're actually having 4 visitor sessions. You can do a
Yeah.
Thursday A, a Thursday B, a Saturday A, a Saturday B. So you actually have 4 sessions, and then you go into the conclusion. I like that.
All right, have we settled on when we want to do it in November?
The Thursday, so it'd be Thursday the 17th.
Before your season?
Well, I think the dates that are there are fine. The ones are workshop, the 16th, and then it's the Saturday after. If we move it ahead, it's election week.
Okay, but I thought we were doing a Thursday one in September the 22nd. Why are we not gonna stay with Thursday, in November?
What about October?
The plan proposal, what Steve mentioned, to cancel the September workshop. So this would be in place of the workshop.
Yeah.
Right. The November 16th, if we backed it up to the, let me see, 16th would be, the 10th would be, do you wanna do the 10th? I mean, I'm just thinking about getting involvement. If we did it the 10th on Thursday, and then the 12th on Saturday, that would be after election day, but before hunting season. I mean, I'm not trying to be a redneck here, but I know a lot of people like to hunt.
It's a very real thing. My school shut down.
Yes, yeah,
11
that's
days
a
out of
holiday.
12.
I know, I got a lot of friends that leave on that, on that.
Some people are getting their food
Yeah, exactly.
for the year.
Women are going on the cruises and stuff because husbands are coming.
Yeah, I know, this is the thought. We already have it as a planned meeting date.
When's the planning commission meeting in November?
It's on the 2nd and 16th.
We have a bunch of rednecks here.
That question's on the 2nd?
Because the 8th is election day.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So am I hearing,
I don't know, board's meeting.
On the
First, yeah.
I'm gonna strongly offer that we cancel the work session on the 16th and move the visioning to the 10th and do the second visioning on the 12th.
So you're saying the 10th and the 12th.
Alright, I got it in pen.
You got it?
Alright, and I'm gonna revise this and get it.
But we're not having a September one
Our work session.
or October one,
Okay, you also have a holiday then,
just September and November.
11th is Veterans Day.
11th is Veterans Day.
So
No, no.
that would be the day before that.
Oh, well,
Well,
Veterans would be
have
Friday.
to be
People
over.
going out of town.
Veterans Day would be,
Yep.
We have enough people.
The day after.
we'd be having a
Brother,
session
Jan,
the day.
Jan,
Before and after, which, I mean, it's.
Ten.
That's my thought behind
Sarah?
leaving it this date.
Jan.
It's already published on our
I didn't know.
website. You guys are gonna meet,
Yeah.
it's tough either way, Steve. I'm gonna say,
Yeah, you
Kim.
you know, it's,
Kim,
I guess you should be.
no matter what day you do it.
Technically, they don't.
But that's the main, we need public attendance and we have to have planning commissioners here also. Maybe the 10th and the 12th is the best.
Alright. So I will polish this back up, send it to Mr. Nicholson and Mr. Erickson to, bless, and then you guys run with the publication as fast and hard as you can. I can write up a little ditty that just summarizes it that you can push out to all your various sources too. Alright, thank you guys.
Yep.
Thank you, Zach. Long time
So
ago.
that was
That was painful, but we got it.
yeah, basketball, and so on the agenda, we have the new business item number 1, which we already addressed, so we can move on through that, we address that as part of our public hearing.
So that's done.
So we'll move to then call to the public, and we did a specific to the master plan, but go ahead if there's time.
So can I, Jeanette Ropetta, Bullard Road, can I just, for listeners, the visioning sessions are gonna be Thursday and Saturdays, September
22nd.
22nd and
24.
24th, and then nothing in October?
That gives time for the information to be assembled that was received from the first one.
Okay, and then November's will be the, sorry, 10th and 12th?
10 and 12.
Okay, thank you. So I was just saying, you might get a lot of angry widow or housewives that are, that all their guys are off hunting.
No, we got that before, we got it before that.
Did you?
Yeah, that's why we did it.
There you go. Okay, advertising, I don't know who I should address this to. I know you guys can't answer questions. I just wanna know, who can I tell my ideas for advertising? Because there's 10 of them. Somebody needs or should start a Facebook group on the township that gives this information out. That would be perfect, because we could tag that Facebook group in a bunch of different groups that are in Fenton and say, go here to find out about the visioning sessions. It wouldn't take a whole lot of work for somebody to do it, but I know I will not be doing it, but I don't know, maybe I'll start one. If you guys don't start one, I'll start a Facebook group for the visioning session. So I think it'd be better if the township did it. Signs on the roads. So back during the asphalt plant, there was two busy moms, one with young kids working, and then another one who was looking after her dementia, mother-in-law, and we papered this town with signs. We can do it. We can get that information out there, and we can get the signs done for cheap. We need to put up signs. So I would hope that you guys would agree to do that and reach out to somebody who knows how to get that done. Radio ads, we know that that gets done in other communities. Newspaper, local podcasts, the golf course, the gas station, the party store, they would all agree to have flyers or to put something up in their windows there. Top of the website for the township would be really appreciated, that it's not buried at the bottom. This is something very, very important. And also emails. I know they can do what, 3 a month or something like that? I don't know what the number is, 3 a week?
I'm not positive.
Okay,
It's per
I know
month.
it's limited.
I think it's per month.
Per month, yeah. Well, it's limited because they don't pay a subscription, they use the free. I think this might be a time to push for a pay for a subscription so that you can get information out to the people. But an email should be sent for each session would be a wonderful thing. And then I do disagree with putting limits on people for speaking. Everyone should be able to say their 3 minutes. Just because somebody else brought up the idea does not mean that they're gonna express it in the same way that that person said. So I really hate to see you guys saying, sorry, somebody's already talked about that. So anyway, I hope that, is there anybody I can send this information to, these ideas, and find out if somebody could consider them?
Sure, you can send them to the township for sure, right?
Who should I-
Ross, me,
Okay,
Mike,
you and Ross?
there's, yeah,
Okay.
all of those emails are
All right.
public emails and.
So I'm just thinking it over in my mind, if the township does not do a Facebook group, I will do a Facebook group on it, and I won't censor. So if there's stuff said on there, I'll let it
I
go.
don't think the township does Facebook groups.
Okay, all right, so I'll send those in to you guys, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment?
Zoom?
This time?
Zoom.
I don't think that Zoom's gonna be
Can I videotape it then?
It's a public
It's a
meeting.
public meeting? Okay,
It's a
thanks.
public meeting, it's,
I'll get
it's
someone
online, on YouTube, yeah.
Okay, I'll get someone else to do that each session.
All right.
that the intent
More
could talk,
public comment,
his
we'll move
opinion
to
or whatever.
miscellaneous business, anything, Carrie?
Okay.
Anything
My
else?
last comment is, I would think that WHMI would be worthwhile. I think getting it out there.
They're pretty, and so is, the
I think getting it out there, you know, just put it out. I mean, we wanna get the input.
All right, anything else, Zach?
No, just thanks again for your patience. It can be tough to organize cats sometime, and you guys
thank you
are.
for your patience.
Yeah.
Because we hadn't really talked this through as to how best to do this, so
Mhm.
unfortunately it took longer than we had anticipated.
I think we came up with the best, we came up with quite a solid plan.
That's good. All right, we'll move to adjourn.
Right.
Believe me, Garrett, let's stand up.
We took that, we got sure you wanted to do that.
Yeah, maybe.